Chapter 4269. After carefully sizing up the 5 little ones, Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the ink jade Qilin. He said with a smile, "Ink jade Qilin, I might leave this place very soon. You promised me before that wherever I go, you'll follow me. Do you still keep your word?" The ink jade Qilin didn't expect Xiao Hua to ask this as soon as they met. He unconsciously hesitated, but a moment later, he resolutely replied, "Master, after this apocalyptic flood, I know what is called sincere unity and helping each other in the same boat. Therefore, I'm unwilling to leave them. If old master insists on this lowly one following, this lowly one will definitely follow without any complaints. However, if old master can show mercy and bring all of them along, that would be for the best." "Hee, why would I bring you along?" Xiao Hua smiled. Now that the great disaster of the wilderness has just passed, there are many things waiting to be done. You're the 5 little ones. How can you leave the wilderness? Forget it. Let the agreement between you and this old man go up in smoke. I only hope that you can restrain your unruly character in the future and treat the weak creatures of the wilderness well." "Thank you, master." The ink jade Qilin was overjoyed. He knelt down in front of Xiao Hua and thanked him endlessly. The gold toad, multicolored peacock, black tortoise and black sky white tiger were also happy and knelt down. Seeing the 5 little ones thanking him, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "It's rare for you all to be enlightened. As the saying goes, a prodigal son is better than gold. Today, I'll also give you some benefits." With that, Xiao Hua raised his hand, and a crystal light appeared on his fingers. Then, as if he had grown 5 arms, 5 similar fingers fell on the foreheads of the 5 little beasts of the Great Desolation. Boom! The ink jade Qilin and the others felt their vision go dark. Countless wilderness catalog poured into their minds like a tide. They were shocked and hurriedly closed their eyes to comprehend. Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and moved the 5 little ones to the ground. Then, he turned into the wind and floated away. After several tens of days, when the 5 little ones woke up, where was Xiao Hua? What the 5 young ones of the primordial world did not expect was that Xiao Hua had once again arrived at the heaven-reaching peak. Looking at the collapsed Tongtian Peak, the mountain looked like the backbone of a defeated hero. Its unyielding and indestructible aura was still emanating from it under the scorching sun. The strange beasts of the eldritch continent did not dare to get too close to it. Xiao Hua could not help but sigh and say, Tongtian Peak was originally innocent, but it fell into the hands of the heavenly demon of the eldritch continent. It was a grave sin. The entire eldritch continent was almost destroyed because of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua nodded. Heaven-connecting peak is the crystallization of the heart's blood of billions of stone giants. They also used their lives to build it. If he were to be placed in the Your Wilds continent, he would most likely be treated as a pillar of shame. No one knows what will happen in the future. The material of the heavens connecting peak seems to be very strange, and the refining method is also very mysterious. It's not something that I can see through. Green-robed Xiao Hua's eyes were also shining. Moreover, under the innate heavy water, everything in the eldritch continent was corroded. Only Tongtian Peak was not damaged in the slightest. This thing should be of great use. Actually, Phoenix Body Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment and suggested, the material needed to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven connecting staff doesn't seem to be something like Tongtian Peak. However, since it's a divine object made by heaven, we shouldn't waste it. We might as well collect it first and see if it's useful in the future. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He wrapped his mind around Tongtian Peak and tried to collect it. He shook his head and said, "This thing was refined by the heavenly demon divine ability. Its weight has long exceeded I's ability. It's impossible to collect it in a short time." What a pity. The doppelgangers all felt that it was a pity. Just as Xiao Hua turned and was about to fly away, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua and Buddha Bodhi suddenly spoke at the same time. "Fellow Taoist, don't worry." "Oh?" Xiao Hua stared blankly, then said with a smile on his face, "Could it be that you 2 fellow Taoists have a way?" Dragon Vein Xiao Hua and Buddha Bodhi flew to Tongtian Peak. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua first released his origin sense, sweeping from the top to the bottom of Tongtian Peak, while Buddha Bodhi released his Buddhist sense from the bottom to the top. After the 2 doppelgangers finished their inspection, they looked at each other and smiled. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua flew in front of Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist. Although this Tongtian peak is incomparably large, every inch of it is refined by the secret techniques of my dragon clan and Buddhist sect. If I and Master Bodhi work together, and with the cooperation of all fellow Taoists, we have a 60% chance of collecting it. Excellent. Xiao Hua clapped his hands, bowed and said, "Thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoists." Dragon bloodline Xiao Hua and Buddha Subhuti had a careful discussion for several days. Xiao Hua and his doppelgangers listened attentively at the side. When the discussion was over, Dragon bloodline Xiao Hua revealed his 5-clawed true dragon form. The dragon crystal that had not yet been refined transformed into a scale armor and appeared outside his dragon body. Dragon bloodline Xiao Hua roared loudly. Dragon bloodline Xiao Hua's dragon armor emitted a dragon breath that made tens of thousands of people prostrate themselves before falling onto one end of Tongtian Peak. Dragon bloodline Xiao Hua's dragon breath seeped out from the depths of Tongtian Peak, transforming into an inch-long dragon form that swam towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. At the other end of the broken Tongtian Peak, Buddha Subhuti held the Tree of 7 Wonders in his hand and chanted scriptures. 7 rays of light fell onto Tongtian Peak. Golden runes similarly seeped out from the light. These golden runes were like Bodhi trees that were more than an inch long, spreading towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. It took no less than 10 days for the dragon marks and Bodhi trees to completely cover the broken section of Tongtian Peak. Sure enough, it was as Dragon Vein Xiao Hua said. Within every inch of space of Tongtian Peak, the dragon marks and Bodhi trees were very abstrusely intertwined. A kind of heaven and earth truth faintly emerged from within. Alas! Xiao Hua saw this scene and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The heavenly Tao is boundless, but I was born with a cliff. Rise! Dragon Vein Xiao Hua let out a dragon roar from one side of Tongtian Peak, and hundreds of millions of dragon marks rushed up along with the dragon roar. Rise! Buddha Bodhi opened his mouth almost at the same time, chanting Buddha's name. The wonderful Tree of 7 Treasures was also lifted up as heavy as 10,000 catties, and hundreds of millions of Bodhi trees also soared into the sky along with the dragon marks. Boom! The entire earth trembled, and that huge broken Tongtian Peak actually showed signs of being lifted up. Seeing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be overjoyed. At the same time he released his consciousness, he shouted, "Fellow Taoists, please make your move. Rise!" Green-robed Xiao Hua shouted loudly, and took out the sword gourd. Tens of thousands of spirit execution vital light flew out, and wrapped around a part of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua also didn't show any weakness. 9 cauldrons flew out, and the 5-colored true qi also turned into a huge cauldron shape, wrapping around a part of Tongtian Peak. Phoenix body Xiao Hua let out a long cry, and flew to the bottom of Tongtian Peak. His whole body flickered with the power of the moon and stars, and countless invisible light pillars descended from the sky, also lifting up a part of Tongtian Peak. Devil spirit Xiao Hua landed in another place. Devil light surged around his body, and he turned into a 10,000 zhong tall devil body. That big hand firmly grasped the mountain rocks of Tongtian Peak, and countless devils roared as they lifted up Tongtian Peak. Bone-tempering Xiao Hua took out the celestial white bone. The 3-headed, 6-armed celestial white bone spewed out a light pillar that covered Tongtian Peak. The 6 arms, along with the expansion of the avatar, directly lifted up the last part of Tongtian Peak with their hands. Withdraw. Seeing that the huge broken Tongtian Peak was being moved by the concerted efforts of the many clones, Xiao Hua hurriedly urged his secret technique, and his consciousness mixed with divine sense fell on Tongtian Peak. Withdraw. Sensing Xiao Hua's secret technique, the many clones urged their divine abilities at the same time. Wang! A strange howl sounded, and it seemed like the nearby space was collapsing and bursting. Along with this howl, the broken Tongtian Peak was lifted up a few inches, and that incomparably huge broken Tongtian Peak immediately and strangely disappeared. Hong hong hong. Along with the disappearance of the broken Tongtian Peak, countless explosions and uncontrollable fluctuations crazily rushed out everywhere. Whether it was Dragon Vein Xiao Hua, Buddha Bodhi, or even Phoenix body Xiao Hua, their bodies flashed with indescribable brilliance as they hurriedly urged their secret techniques to suppress the divine abilities that were about to go out of control. Needless to say, Xiao Hua's face was already pale gold, and his entire body showed signs of collapsing. There were faint traces of blood between his eyebrows, and the surface of his Ni-1 palace was bursting with various innate divine seals. Xiao Hua's divine sense and mind were already exhausted. Xiaohua didn't dare to say anything, and he hurriedly took some medicinal pellets to adjust his breathing. The other clones also sat cross-legged in various places and quietly cultivated. After a few months, the recovered Xiaohua and his clones once again put the other half of the broken Tongtian Peak into the space, and then rather weakly left Tongtian Peak and flew towards the teleportation array. The teleportation array was the key for Xiaohua to leave the Great Desolate Continent, so outside the teleportation array, there was a capital Heavenly Star Array personally set up by green-robed Xiaohua. Seeing that the capital Heavenly Star Array hadn't suffered any damage, Xiaohua only checked it for a moment, and then left Confucian cultivator Xiaohua in the array, letting him use the Confucian secret technique to continue modifying the teleportation array. He took the other clones to the magma where they first encountered the stone giant. The surface of the magma was completely covered by innate heavy water, and the thick magma stones were several hundred li deep. However, it was also because of the innate heavy water's cover that an extremely fierce power was constantly brewing and roaring under the magma. Previously, when the flood was overflowing, the innate heavy water constantly seeped in, extinguishing this power bit by bit. Now the innate heavy water no longer existed, and after the heat of the magma solidified the innate heavy water, it penetrated to the surface again. Great! Xiaohua looked at all this, and couldn't help but clap his hands and praise. The heavenly Tao is just, and all things have their Tao. But when it's destroyed, the germination of rebirth has already been deeply implanted. This Xiao thought that although this apocalypse had disappeared, after all, the great desolate continent had been ravaged by the innate heavy water for many days, and this injury was extremely difficult to recover from. But now, it seems that things are far from what this Xiao can speculate. Perhaps in a few days, when the magma breaks through the surface, a new world will arrive. Chapter 4270. More than that. Soul cultivator Xiaohua also smiled. He raised his hand and pointed to the distance. That was not where the magma was, but after the innate heavy water corroded the hill, it seeped into the ground. But from the surface, it was mottled with rocks, completely devoid of life. However, the place Xiaohua pointed to was the place where the innate heavy water did not seep in. There were many seeds emitting green shadows, and clusters of vigorous life force were already brewing there. Life and death, death and life. Death is the beginning of life, and at the same time life is also the beginning of death. There is a glimmer of life in any apocalypse. The evolution of the heavenly Tao is just like this. Witnessing death and 10,000 layers of life force, Phoenix Body Xiaohua was extremely emotional, and shouted happily, we can also treat this apocalypse as the arrival of another golden age. Not bad, not bad. Bone-honed Xiaohua also clapped and said, in the past, the stone giants were as simple and honest as I, and were always bullied by others. In the future, they will be the powerhouses of this great desolate continent. Hearing this, Xiaohua unconsciously muttered to himself. Green-robed Xiaohua understood Xiaohua's narrow-mindedness the most. He looked at Xiaohua with a smile that was not a smile and said, What? Is fellow Taoist still unwilling? Xiaohua pinched his chin and said with a rather sinister smile, in I's space, even birds have to pluck a feather. The stone giants, the wood giants, and the others are hiding from a disaster here. How can I let them go so easily? Xiaohua was naturally not as narrow-minded as others thought. Previously, when there was only one Shenhua continent, Xiaohua would definitely not hesitate to release these strange beasts. But now, there were many continents in his space, and that golden light was clearly corresponding to the high-level space of the upper realm. If Xiaohua left the great desolate continent, where would he find strange beasts corresponding to the high-level space? Today, when he released these strange beasts, the space would become barren, and he was somewhat unwilling. Fellow Taoist, why are you in a daze? Green-robed Xiaohua disdainfully said. His attitude was really a bit like, you have white hair all over your body, and you call others a demon. He said, you collected so many souls in the imperial palace. Which one of them after reincarnation didn't become strange beasts? These beasts are just a drop in the ocean compared to them. Xiaohua's heart was moved after hearing the green-robed Xiaohua's words. However, when he thought about it carefully, he snorted disdainfully. If the beasts that died in the Great Desolation Continent could only be reincarnated into the Great Desolation Continent, then Lord Dragon God and Maitreya Buddha couldn't be reincarnated into the Hidden Immortal Continent and Dawn Rain Continent. What do you know? Xiaohua said with a smile, Even Namo Maitreya Buddha doesn't dare to speak about the mysteries of reincarnation. How much can you possibly know? How about this? The soul cultivator Xueqi suggested. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to leave all the primitive beasts here. You can leave some of them in pairs and send the rest back to the primitive continent. Good. Xueqi laughed heartily, but after clapping his hands, he blinked his eyes and asked, the stone giants don't seem to differentiate between male and female. Isn't this giving I a difficult problem? Xueqi's words were naturally a joke. However, just as he was about to enter the space, boom boom, a loud sound came from afar. Xueqi hurriedly raised his head and saw a pillar of flame mixed with black smoke in the distant sky. Xueqi was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, when he saw everything clearly, his face was not shocked but happy instead. He said with a smile, there seems to be magma gushing out from the ground in front of us. Not to mention other things, the destruction of the innate heavy water is about to be eliminated in a few dozen li of magma. Yes, yes. The doppelgangers also said with a smile, let's go take a look. Xueqi and the others were not in a hurry. They slowly flew over and also released their divine sense to check other places along the way. Just as they saw, the area where the stone giants lived was where the magma was more active. The innate heavy water could only cover it for a while. Now, the magma everywhere had begun to erupt eagerly. Now, the magma had already erupted in places where the surface was more solid and less innate heavy water had penetrated. When Xueqi and the others arrived, the gushing magma had already gradually decreased. However, there was still a lot of powder that drifted to many places. When the powder landed, it covered the surface corroded by the innate heavy water. Xueqi's figure landed and picked up some grayish-black powder from the ground. He twirled it between his index finger and thumb a few times, then put it in front of his nose and sniffed. Although there was a pungent smell, Xueqi's face still revealed a smile and said, not bad, this thing is very useful. It won't be long before the place where it lands will become fertile soil. This. You can even know this? The green-robed Xueqi was shocked and hurriedly landed. He imitated Xueqi and twirled some powder and sniffed it. Other than the pungent smell, he really couldn't smell anything else. This is farming that I learned since I was young. Xueqi said with a smile, how can you know? Since you were young? Is it here? The green-robed Xueqi asked curiously. The smile on Xueqi's face faded a little. He raised his head and looked at the dusk sky, then looked at the still unfamiliar land. He shook his head slightly and said, this? I don't know at this time. If there's a chance, I want to see what kind of place you live. The green-robed Xueqi said with a mischievous smile. I also want to learn how to smell this powder. Cultivate seriously. Xueqi nodded. When we succeed in our divine ability, there will definitely be a chance. And I believe there will definitely be a chance. The green-robed Xueqi nodded firmly. His gaze seemed to pass through the sky, through the turbulence of the world, and even more so through Xueqi's memories. Xueqi originally wanted to send out the strange beasts from the space, but seeing the great changes on the surface of the great desolate continent, he wasn't in a hurry. He simply brought his clones and flew into the depths of the great desolate continent. Along the way, pillars of fire filled the sky, black smoke filled the sky, and even many places collapsed. Some mountain ranges stretched out from the ground along with the eruption of magma. Seeing that the air was so unbearable, Xueqi and the soul cultivator Xueqi activated the lightning and thunder technique again. The sky was densely covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. The rainstorm was born again. However, this time the rainstorm wasn't the Xiantian heavy water, but the real rain. Xueqi didn't use this technique of clouds and rain, but once he used it, it was beyond his control. After all, the entire great desolate continent hadn't had any rain for many years. After the Xiantian heavy water, the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth that was imprisoned by the heaven and earth pagoda's formation began to recover. The dark rain in the sky not only had a tendency to continue, but also spread towards the great desolate continent. No way. Looking at the whole world, the rain poured down, the magma roared, the mountains rose up, and the rivers formed into rivers. Xueqi cried out like a frightened bird. I won't also create a world-ending disaster, right? Haha, don't worry. Fellow Taoist. Phoenix body Xueqi laughed. Although the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth in this world is raging, It's all under the suppression of the other origin energies of heaven and earth. The power of the stars and moon in the distance has also begun to descend. Dozens of days passed like this, and the sky began to clear up. A ray of sunlight pierced through the thick dark clouds in the sky like a giant sword. Then, all the dark clouds began to dissipate. Fierce winds suddenly rose, and a seven-colored rainbow bridge ran through the world. The whole great desolate continent seemed to have just been cleansed, and was exceptionally clean. It really was a sign of another kind of golden age coming. Fellow Taoist bone tempering, how about you go take a look at the situation underground? Xueqi's divine sense had already seen it, but he still didn't feel at ease, and ordered bone tempering Xueqi to go. Before long, bone tempering Xueqi returned and reported, "Fellow Taoist, there's still some magma surging under the ground, but most of it has already stabilized." "Good." Xueqi was overjoyed, and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, now we can release the strange beasts we've taken in." Then, Xueqi's divine sense entered the space, and according to Soul Cultivator Xueqi's suggestion, he left some of the weaker strange beasts in pairs, and released the rest. When collecting the strange beasts, all the Fortune Gates disciples were dispatched, and it took a long time to complete. When releasing the strange beasts, there was no need to mobilize the Fortune Gates disciples. Xueqi and his avatars only needed to go to various places and find a suitable place to throw these strange beasts into, and let them settle down on their own. After being educated, these strange beasts were no longer comparable to their former selves. Not to mention anything else, just the stone giants. These stone giants looked at the place that was completely different from before and the unfamiliar environment, but they didn't panic at all. Those with spiritual power used some of their magical powers to break the hard surface of the magma. Those without spiritual power started to work in the deep hole that they broke open. With the stone giants' cooperation, they soon opened a passage to the magma. With the magma, the stone giants had a home, and each of them looked for their own nest. Several months passed in this manner. When Xueqi sent the last batch of strange beasts into a mountain range, he finally let out a long sigh of relief and soared into the sky. When he came to a stop, as far as his eyes could see, a scene of lush greenery fell into his eyes. A continuous rain had sent enough water to the earth, and the seeds of life under the dry earth had the opportunity to grow. They couldn't bear the loneliness and poked their heads out from the earth. Not to mention, Xueqi had already prepared food seeds and spiritual seeds in the space. When his avatars sent out the strange beasts, they also threw these food seeds and spiritual seeds on the desolate mainland's land. Several months' time was enough for these food seeds and spiritual seeds to germinate, and also enough time for vegetation to cover the land and mountains. With green, would a colorful life be far away? Chapter 4271. Ha ha ha, it's a success. Green-robed Xueqi proudly roared at the ground without using a trace of magic power. Xueqi listened to the sound disappear in the sky and smiled without saying anything. In the next few days, Phoenix Body Xueqi, Green-robed Xueqi, and the others returned to the space early or late. Each of them stood beside Xueqi with eyes full of hope. Looking at the land of hope, their hearts were brimming with pride. Describing them as the birth of a new world in their hands was too much of a merit, but the fact that a new world was preserved in their hands was well deserved. Such merit and fortune were not things that ordinary cultivators could come across, and similarly, they were not things that ordinary cultivators could obtain. It's just a matter of time. It's not a success. Green-robed Xueqi said after his excitement died down. Green-robed Xueqi was stunned. He scratched his head and asked curiously, "There are no more strange beasts in the space? Could it be that fellow Taoist has hidden some?" Damn it! Xueqi was sweating in his heart. He first brought the strange beasts out of the star halo in the sky, and sent them to the space where Shenhua continent was located. Then, he had these clones send them to various places. Whether there were any strange beasts in the star halo or not, the clones didn't know. However, green-robed Xueqi exposed it with a single sentence. Obviously, he had the same small plan as Xueqi. The strange beasts have been properly arranged, but the disciples of Fragrance Cult have not been arranged yet. Xueqi said unhappily. "Oh, these little things." Green-robed Xueqi said indifferently. "Isn't it just looking for a place with them? Isn't that easy?" Green-robed Xueqi said with a smile. Green-robed fellow Taoist is right. The previous desolate continent was not suitable for the human race, but after the apocalypse, Although the environment is still different from the hidden immortal continent, it is enough for the disciples of Fragrance Cult to survive. I passed by a place that is very suitable for these disciples. Xiao Hua's face lit up. Just as he was about to ask, a figure flashed beside him. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua appeared in the air. How is it? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up again and asked hurriedly. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua said with a smile that was neither arrogant nor humble, "Fellow Taoists, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Good. Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Fellow Taoist has made a great contribution." You flatter me. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "It's all thanks to fellow immortal green-robed and fellow immortal soul cultivator. The teleportation formation you constructed was very good. With this foundation, this little one's Confucian cultivation secret technique will be very easy to succeed. Therefore, this little one doesn't dare to claim credit." Haha, you're welcome, you're welcome. The green-robed Xiao Hua proudly looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "I can also be of great use now. It's a pity that no one even knows his name now." Xiao Hua was first stunned, and then he understood that this green-robed Xiao Hua's wisdom and character were the most mature. Now he wants to ask for a status from me. Many thanks to the Thunderbolt Venerable. Xiao Hua thanked the green-robed Xiao Hua. In the future, there will no longer be a green-robed Xiao Hua in this world, only the Thunderbolt Immortal. Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist Xiao, you're welcome, you're welcome. The Thunderbolt Immortal happily helped Xiao Hua up. Many thanks to Taoist Wu. Xiao Hua then saluted the soul cultivator Xiao Hua and said, "In the future, there will be no soul cultivator Xiao Hua in this family, only shamans." Shamans didn't feel much about this status, nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist, do as you please." Soon after, Xiao Hua thanked all his clones, one by one, and declared that there will no longer be a clone Xiao Hua in this world. Now, we should be able to pass through the time turbulence, right? Xiao Hua then asked Wen Chu somewhat worriedly. How would Wen Chu know? He could only shake his head and said with a bitter smile, "There should be no problem with this sage information, but before we use it, who knows what kind of accident will happen? AI, we must not have any more accidents." Xiao Hua sighed. "We have been wandering in the outside world for too long. We have been here for several tens of thousands of years. We don't care about this anymore." The Thunderbolt Immortal bluntly attacked. If Xian wants to get married, even an immortal emperor would not be able to stop her. You really have a crow's mouth. Shaman scolded in both anger and amusement. Let's go, fellow Taoist Feng Wu, let us take a look at that place. Xiao Hua waved his hand, as if he wanted to get rid of these worries, and said, "Okay." Feng Wu let out a long cry, spread her wings and flew to a place. In just a few days, Xiao Hua and the others arrived at a huge mountain range. This mountain range was thousands of feet high, surrounded by rivers, and above the mountain range were ancient trees and vegetation. Previously, Feng Wu had sowed some seeds of grain, and some spiritual herbs, and gradually took shape. Great! This is a blessed land. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and immediately said with a smile, "The disciples of the Fragrance Cult will be able to pass down the incense of the Fragrance Cult." The Thunderbolt Immortal pondered for a moment, and said, "There seems to be some long spike beasts nearby. These long spike beasts like to eat small animals. I am afraid that the disciples of the Fragrance Cult will not be safe here." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What, fellow Taoist Feng Wu wants to do something? Of course." The Thunderbolt Immortal said proudly, "Although they are disciples of the Fragrance Cult, they have nothing to do with I. But after all, they are of the human race. How can I just stand by and watch? Then I will have to trouble you, fellow Taoist." Xiao Hua was very gratified, and he cupped his hands and smiled. "We will also help." Wu, Wen Chu, Feng Wu, and even Tian Ren and Shi came to join in the fun. Thus, everyone joined hands and laid down a great formation within a radius of 10,000 li. It took them several months to complete their task. However, in the end, all the cultivators were dumbfounded. This great formation had a Dharma formation, an Origin formation, a Devil formation, and even a Soul formation. Although the power of the great formation was there, no one could activate it. Thus, everyone looked at Xiao Hua, who knew that Xiao Hua turned a deaf ear to everyone's expectations, and he flew up, looked at the ground, and then waved his hand and said, "Everyone, we will hide ourselves first. I will release the disciples of the fragrance cult from the Shanhua continent. Although the sect leader of the fragrance cult did not say anything, when he handed the disciples over to I, he did not let the disciples see I's face, because he did not want us to leave any impression on the disciples of the fragrance cult. Is there a need for that? The Thunderbolt Immortal flew up with some disdain, and like everyone else, he hid himself, but he still had some complaints. When Xiaohua placed the disciples of the aroma religion in the mountain range, he placed all the cultivation methods, pills, spirit herbs, and magic tools aside. His heart was moved again, and he also placed some of the Tao sect's cultivation methods and secret techniques he had obtained in the aroma religion. He only promised not to embezzle the things of the fragrance cult, but he did not promise not to give them more things. The disciples of the fragrance cult had inherited the method of cultivating the primordial spirit, and also the method of cultivating the nascent soul. It was not too much, was it? After doing all this, Xiaohua's figure once again teleported to a high altitude, and his hands began to form hand seals. Taoist magic, Confucian cultivation methods, soul cultivation methods, and demonic cultivation methods. When the same magic power, demonic qi, and so on turned into crystals and fell into the void, the entire sky was filled with 9 brilliant colors, and all kinds of fluctuations were like dragons dancing in the air. Rumbling sounds were more deafening than thunder. Xiaohua's figure turned into a golden body, and when he raised his hands, dozens of rainbow-colored halos were born from his hands, and they were scattered everywhere like chains. All the disciples of the fragrance cult opened their mouths in surprise, and were somewhat at a loss. Buzz! A strange rumbling sound began to be born from the thunder, like the roar of a god. Then, Xiaohua's golden body suddenly withdrew, and the chains fell into his hands, followed by tens of thousands of restrictions of various colors. When these restrictions fell into Xiaohua's hands, he slowly waved his hands and shouted, "Go!" The entire brilliance condensed into the shape of a halo. Xiaohua then waved his hand, and a jade eye appeared. When Xiaohua channeled his magic power, the halo hit the jade eye. Clang! The jade eye condensed into the shape of a tiger talisman. Xiaohua picked up the tiger talisman and casually threw it to a disciple of the fragrance cult. Then he said, "This place is no longer a ruin. This mountain range is where you all will live in the future. In order for you all to survive here, this old man has already built a formation in the nearby mountains. This is the proof to enter and exit the formation. You all should take care of it. You don't need to ask who this old man is. You just need to remember to live well here and cultivate. As long as the orthodoxy of the incense religion can be carried down safely, it will be your contribution." With that, Xiaohua didn't care about what the tens of thousands of disciples of the fragrance cult were thinking. He waved his hands again, and tens of thousands of thunderbolts fell on the formation. The entire formation slowly lit up, and Xiaohua's figure turned into a rainbow and flew towards the location of the sun in the sky. "We thank Senior." The disciples of the fragrance cult were shocked by Xiaohua's big move, and they all prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. After Xiaohua left the mountain range, the Thunderbolt Immortal almost held his stomach and laughed. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, "Tao friend, I really admire you." Although the fragrance cult's ancestor didn't want his disciples to see Tao friend's appearance, but Tao friend's actions will leave an impression in their hearts. Won't it be even more unforgettable than seeing Tao friend's appearance? Xiaohua didn't feel embarrassed seeing that his petty actions were seen through by the Thunderbolt Immortal. He stiffened his neck and retorted, "What? Do you not want to leave your name? Otherwise, you'll be inside the formation." When he saw that Xiaohua was about to expose his past, the lightning Taoist's face flushed red, and he was about to interrupt Xiaohua. However, at this moment, the sound of bamboo flutes suddenly resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. After that, hundreds of millions of flowers appeared out of thin air. At the same time, over 10 dragons and phoenixes appeared in midair while waves of golden threads descended like rain from above Xiaohua and the others. "Ayo this! What's going on?" The Thunderbolt Immortal turned pale with fright. Because of the birth of these flowers, the entire world was imprisoned. Not to mention sound, even thoughts were difficult to move. Chapter 4272. Just as the Thunderbolt Immortal's doubts were born, a myriad of phenomena appeared in the surrounding 100 li of space. Farmers plowing the fields, mulberry people raising silkworms, fishermen fishing, hundreds of children chanting, thousands of Buddhas chanting scriptures, and thousands of countries dying. In short, all kinds of worldly phenomena appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. At the same time, a kind of incense that Xiao Hua had never smelled before appeared in his surroundings. This incense was very strange. When Xiao Hua sniffed it, it was as if the entire space was filled with this incense. Moreover, the 100 meridians in his body and the 13200 small points in his body were intoxicated by this incense. A kind of lazy, powerless, and even decadent feeling was naturally born. However, this feeling was only limited to his body. His spirit and thoughts were incomparably active. Previously, Xiao Hua of the heavenly Tao and Xiao Hua of the karma had passed on to him, but now, in just a short moment, they were all absorbed by him. What was special was that the wood, wind, and lightning essences that had just been absorbed by Xiao Hua's body were fusing dozens of times faster than before. Following this fusion, Xiao Hua's mind expanded in all directions without limit, like a leisurely cloud. Kang kang kang. Another wave of sound rang out from an unknown place. Within this sound, pillars of righteous qi were born like sky-reaching peaks, crazily falling into the void. The originally thin righteous qi immediately filled up. Following the righteous qi's birth, the flying flowers actually shattered, turning into a hurricane that fell into Xiao Hua's body. After the time it took to eat a meal, the sound, the 100 forms, and even the light and shadows also shrank, crazily falling into Xiao Hua's body. Kang! Like the sound of a harp breaking, all the light and shadows and illusions disappeared in this sound. At the same time, an even stranger shadow flew out from Xiao Hua's body, landing at the place where the flying flowers were and disappearing. What's going on? The celestial stood blankly in the air, not knowing what to do. As for Xiao Hua, he was dumbstruck. He looked into the distance, his expression like water, not knowing what he was thinking. Sandalwood. Suddenly, Bodhi cried out in alarm. Buddha fire. Buddha fire condensed into Buddha crystal. Is it a crystal smaller than an ant? Golden in color and completely transparent? Xiao Hua asked indifferently. Bodhi's head bobbed up and down like a chick pecking at rice, far from his usual calm demeanor. There are no humans in the great wasteland continent. And we brought the human race in from the ruins. Xiao Hua explained, now, we've even averted the apocalypse. These disciples of the incense cult have not only inherited the Tao teachings of the Taoist sect, but they've also inherited the flames of our human race. Not to mention the inheritance of the incense cult, the incense merit of the human race belongs to us. Although I didn't create humans for no reason, the merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them belongs to none other than me. Therefore, this flying flower is a phenomenon caused by the descent of righteous energy from the heavens. It is also the beginning of the process of us receiving the merit of splitting the heavens and condensing the godhood. Divine spark. The thunderclap immortal turned pale with fright. What is a divine spark? It sounds so high and mighty. Xiao Hua shrugged and said with a bitter smile, I don't know either. I reckon it's something that matches the body of a half-god. Fellow Taoist, were you depressed because of this just now? Wen Chu was also somewhat puzzled. No. Xiao Hua shook his head and looked into the distance with some puzzlement. I just felt like I lost something. And the thing I lost is very rare and precious. This feeling is very strange. What did you lose? The thunderclap immortal couldn't be bothered to ask about the godhood and continued to ask. I don't know either. But I have a feeling that I left this place for myself. As if it was nourished by the so-called merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them. It's too profound. I find it hard to understand. Wen Chu shook his head in puzzlement. However, back then, I received the all-living beings point Wen Chu because of the merit of teaching. Fellow Taoists' merit of opening the heavens must be even more powerful than the merit of teaching, right? I'm afraid that you'll only be able to discover the profoundness of this after charging into the great wasteland continent again. Haha, that's right. Xiao Hua laughed loudly and looked around. Since there was a first time, why can't there be a second time or a third time? When this Xiao comes again in the future, this place will definitely be a new world. Ayo! At this moment, the shamaness suddenly cried out in alarm. Fellow Taoist, I seem to have sensed the spiritual sense mark of the great snow mountain. Can you confirm? Xiao Hua's heart instantly weakened and he asked worriedly. How would I know? The shamaness hurriedly explained. I can only sense the indistinct spiritual sense mark extremely far away. How would I know if it's actually from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Let's go. Xiaohua suddenly realized. Who cares if it's from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Right now, the most important thing is for us to leave. After saying that, except for the shamaness, all the other clones entered Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua and the shamaness simultaneously activated the going south, going north, going south, going north technique and entered the teleportation array under the mountain range. Hurry! Xiaohua landed in the array and impatiently waved his hand. 9 dragon crystals fell into the teleportation array and then he dragged the Thunderbolt Immortal and 1 Chu out. Together with the shamaness, the 3 clones activated the teleportation array. Under the activation of the 9 dragon crystals, the Soul Cultivator and the Scholar Cultivator gradually found the direction of the teleportation array. Xiaohua was unable to contain his joy as he entered the teleportation array and shouted, "Fellow Taoists, success or failure depends on this one move, Kacha." At this moment, the teleportation array suddenly rumbled and stopped. The already formed teleportation channel also disappeared. What's going on? Xiaohua turned pale with fright and asked, "Fellow Taoist Wu, what happened?" It seems. The shamaness couldn't confirm and hesitated. The teleportation channel seems to have hit something. What did you hit? Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He pointed at the dragon crystals that had already turned into powder and said, "Just hitting something can cause the void channel to collapse?" This. I also don't know. The outside of the wilderness is a turbulent flow of time. Anything strange can happen? The shamaness somewhat helplessly replied. It was really strange. The scene he saw when he fell into the wilderness that day suddenly appeared in Xiaohua's mind. It was a light and shadow. A thin and tall figure appeared in it. That figure was lying helplessly, holding the sword embryo in its right hand, as if it had already fainted. Beside the figure were the black dog and the yellow marten. After this light and shadow appeared, suddenly an indescribable ripple extended behind the figure. It was similar to the fluctuation of the teleportation channel Xiaohua used to enter the wilderness. But now that he thought about it, this fluctuation came from behind the light and shadow. In other words, it rushed out from the wilderness. How could it possibly collide with the teleportation channel Xiaohua entered? That day, when the fluctuation collided with the teleportation channel the light and shadow was in, it produced a strange change. The light and shadow shook and quickly disappeared. Now that he thought about it, he was afraid that it fell into the forward ripple, which was the direction of his teleportation channel. Could it be? Xiaohua's heart was greatly shaken. Could it be that the thin and tall figure? Is this Xiao who still hasn't obtained the Dawn Rain continent? Fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist. Not allowing Xiaohua to think more, the shamaness urged again. Do we still need to activate it now? Of course. A moment ago, Xiaohua still felt that his future was uncertain. But now, Xiaohua was full of confidence. He waved his hand and took out 9 dragon crystals, instructing, "Quickly. Let's activate the array. This time, our target will definitely be the hidden immortal continent." The shamaness, the Thunderbolt Immortal, and Wen Chu's spirits were shaken. They activated the teleportation channel. When a ball of brilliance appeared from the teleportation channel, the shamaness activated the channel, which directly pierced into the void. The 3 clones quickly fell into Xiaohua's space. When Xiaohua stepped into the void, he somewhat lingered as he looked at the pitch-black darkness outside the great array. He thought to himself, the wilderness, this Xiao is leaving. Perhaps in the future, there will be a chance to come back. Or perhaps, when I come back again, the entire wilderness will be different. As the entire teleportation channel flashed, Xiaohua's figure disappeared. At the same time that Xiaohua's figure disappeared, the teleportation channel shook again. A crack actually appeared on the entire teleportation channel. This crack directly pierced into the void and went more than 10 li above the teleportation channel. Immediately, the entire void trembled for a moment and actually froze. The crack in the void existed just like that between the great array and the mountain peak. After an unknown period of time, perhaps 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years, or even 100 million years, that spatial crack once again shook violently, and a resplendent brilliance was born from within the crack. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Like a thunderclap, the entire spatial crack and the array began to distort. Whoa. The sound of wind whistling rose again, and within the light and shadow, for extremely long shadows could be seen rushing out from the spatial crack. The one in front was the winged Sakra. The demonic horn of this beast Sakra had already lost its fluctuation. Her figure crashed into the transmission array, and unexpectedly, the transmission array was smashed into pieces. Immediately after, the unconscious figures of Yu Mingxin, Yang Haoya, and Wan Wuxin appeared again. They also crashed into the teleportation channel. The teleportation channel originally had some cracks. At this moment, 3 humans and 1 demon came with the power of teleportation and immediately destroyed the teleportation channel. Where is this place? Several days later, Sakra was the first to wake up. She opened her eyes wide and looked around. Then, she looked at the 3 humans. Her face immediately turned sinister. However, just as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws and was about to pounce on them, the space outside the teleportation channel emitted a strange beast's roar. Sakra was slightly taken aback. She hurriedly flew out of the teleportation channel. When she saw the boiling lava outside and a strange beast with a big body, small head, and slender neck in the lava, she couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 4273. Stunned, Indra released his devil sense again. Looking at the barren surroundings, he rolled his eyes and said to himself with a smile, "This place is actually not the ruins. Since there is no more fighting, why should I be in such a hurry to kill the 3 of them? Without them, wouldn't this world be too lonely? So what if I play with them?" After saying that, Indra flew away without looking back, no longer paying attention to Yu Mingxin and the other 2. After a few days, Yu Mingxin slowly woke up. She looked around in surprise and even flew out to take a look. Then she hurriedly woke up Wan Wuxin and Yang Haoya and said, "2 senior brothers, wake up quickly. We seem to have left the ruins and arrived at an unknown continent." While Xiao Hua was activating the incense cult's formation, outside the timelight knot of the Eldritch continent, the void in the distance was distorted. Not to mention the stars, even all the light in space were twisted like fried dough twists. It was completely different from the ordinary space. In this folded and distorted space, a black hole suddenly appeared. After this black hole appeared, thousands of light and shadows burst out from the black hole. Indescribable waves filled the entire space within 10,000 miles. Following this wave, a small dot appeared inexplicably. As soon as it appeared, it immediately teleported to the time-light knot. At this moment, the small dot's figure was revealed. It was that triangular monster. This monster was still spinning and had not stopped, but its huge eyes had already opened slightly. When the eyes opened, the folded and distorted space before the light and shadow rushed towards the time-light knot again. Everything within 10,000 miles was covered in it. Behind this huge eye, there was also an even deeper distorted space like a huge tail. The range of this space distortion was so large and so long that there was an extremely large amount of space distortion. Not to mention space cracks, even space collapses could be found everywhere. This kind of collapse and crack affected countless boundaries and barriers. At this moment, the spatial distortion had already collided with the area enveloped by the time-light knot. Although it had yet to truly collide with the light knot, countless specks of light appeared within several 100,000 kilometers. Within the specks of light, all the distorted space immediately stilled, as if it had been smoothed out. Thousands of phantoms appeared within the specks of light. Huff! The triangular monster let out a long sigh that sounded like a breath. Fist-sized bubbles appeared once again within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. These bubbles didn't look big, but each of them was an independent space. Each space had its own time. Although the time was extremely similar, there were still minute differences. When the spatial bubble appeared, a slight difference in time also appeared, and the time-light spots were immediately disturbed. All the phantoms returned to a distorted space, but this space was instantly destroyed by the triangular monster. Roar! The triangular monster roared and shot out an unparalleled beam of light from its huge eyes. The beam of light was filled with the power of space and some power of time. When the beam of light fell into the time-light knot, the waterfall-like turbulent flow of time actually paused for a moment. Where it paused, the countless phantoms actually condensed together. At this moment, the triangular monster suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it actually turned into a phantom and inserted itself between the phantoms that were about to solidify. However, it was only for a moment. The stagnation of the turbulent flow of time was broken by an even more powerful power of time. The phantoms that had condensed once again dispersed, and the entire time light knot returned to its original state. Just as the time knot was activated, the silhouette of a teleportation channel appeared within the light knot. This silhouette split into countless copies in an instant. In just a short moment, these countless silhouettes condensed into one at the edge of the light knot and rushed into the void. The black and white silhouette followed the direction that the triangular monster had flown from, and an inexplicable space collapsed at its huge tail. The moment the silhouette disappeared, the entire enormous distorted space began to recede from the distance like a flood. As it receded, all the spatial cracks and spatial collapses were strangely smoothed out. The vast sea of snow seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see. In addition to the snow on the ground, there were also snowflakes in the sky. The snowflakes were like goose feathers, falling all over the sky. They landed on the mountain peaks in the wilderness, and in the streams that could no longer be seen. The gurgling sound of the streams reverberated in the air, and it was particularly pleasant to listen to in the quiet mountains. Occasionally, the ups and downs of the mountain range would appear in the distance, but it was quickly covered by the nearby mountain peaks. The mountain peaks were not tall, but they were very steep. There were almost no flat paths to climb them. The mountain peaks were not completely covered in snow, and the mountain peaks were not peaceful. As the north wind whistled, it had long blown away the only warmth in the mountain peaks, and the snowflakes that filled the sky also frantically avoided it. When the north wind hit the mountain peaks, it was like a large hand grabbing the accumulated snow and throwing it into the air. As a result, the snowflakes in the air became even more chaotic. When the north wind calmed down, the snowflakes fell again with a rustling sound. The sound of the snowflakes, together with the sound of flowing water, was like a piece of music. The music floated high up in the sky. Wherever the north wind blew, there were bare bluish-black rocks. Occasionally, some dark green roots would poke out from the gaps between the rocks. The injured grass trembled slightly, as if it was intoxicated by the music. At this time, the mountain peaks were a little ugly. They were mottled with some bluish-black spots, and some were pure white. But looking at the pure white spots, it was really a place with thick layers of snow and ice. The ice sculptures and snow on it were very beautiful. In this beauty, there were some strange or ordinary plants, or blooming red plums, or budding spirit flowers, or even green mushrooms that stretched out to the sky to welcome the snowflakes. There were many more. Occasionally, a spiritual beast that looked like a mountain rat would crawl out from the cracks in the mountain rocks and extend its head towards the spiritual flower. However, before it could open its mouth and extend its sharp claws, its extremely bright little eyes turned around vigilantly. Before it could even clearly see what was behind it, a wave of dragon's breath surged towards it like a tidal wave. The spiritual rat's body immediately stiffened as fear appeared in its eyes. It stood dazedly on the ice and snow. At this time, at the bottom of the mountain, in the distance in the endless snow, there was the sound of footsteps on the snow. A monk wearing a kasaya, wearing a pilu hat, and holding a 9-ringed monk staff in his hand, actually stepped on the snow in this pathless wilderness. With a determined and pious face, wasn't this Chun Zong, who was seeking scriptures in the land of bliss? The sound of footsteps crunching was originally ear-piercing, but in this quiet wilderness, combined with the sound of water, wind and snowflakes, it was extremely harmonious. It reverberated in the wilderness, and a new piece of music was played. However, this harmonious piece of music only lasted for a moment. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Another sound came from behind the monk, disrupting the celestial scene. Then, he saw a muscular draconic horse raising its head, walking and jumping as it followed. It looked very lively. The draconic horse's entire body was pure white. Under its mane, faint golden dragon scales could be faintly seen. As the draconic horse jumped, the tail that was dragging behind it would rise from time to time. When it landed, it would sweep across the ground, stirring up a large amount of snow, causing the snow behind it to fly in all directions. On the forehead of the dragon horse, in the thick mane, a dragon horn was revealed. This dragon horn was a little strange. It was actually in the shape of a crescent moon, and there was a faint halo at the tip of the horn. What was even stranger was not this, but on the back of the dragon horse, where the saddle was supposed to be, there was no saddle. Instead, there were many wooden boxes, and the outer layer of the wooden boxes was wrapped in a thick oilcloth, so no one could see what was inside. The wooden box made a dull sound as the draconic horse jumped. It was as if something heavy had been placed inside. Just as the dragon horse passed by, before the flying snow could fall, another huge fire ape followed. This fire ape had an indifferent look on its face. Although it appeared to be indifferent to everything in the world, it allowed the snow to fall on its head, body, and even its messy fur to be covered in snow. The fire ape carried a magic wand on its shoulder, and its hands were placed on the wand. In its mouth, there was a withered grass root, and it was chewing on it in boredom. Although the fire ape's body emitted a kind of carefree aura, its eyes were fixed on the monk in front of the dragon horse, and it was releasing its yuan sense from time to time to be alert of the surrounding situation. This fire ape was no other demon. It was Yuan Tongtian. After Yuan Tongtian passed by, the snow fell, and another cultivator with thick eyebrows and big eyes, dressed in battle armor, walked over with large strides. This cultivator looked at the snow that had just fallen, and his face was filled with disdain. However, he only snorted, and his breath was like a gust of wind, blowing away the remaining snow. He didn't say anything, and looked at the nearby mountain peak with interest, as if he was admiring it. Chun Zong walked in the snow with difficulty. His cloth shoes were already covered in mud and snow, and now they were soaked. Even the lower half of his monk robe was soaked in water, swaying slightly in the wind. Chun Zong walked a few steps, then paused for a moment. He stood there and took a few deep breaths, then gritted his teeth, and continued to walk forward. Seeing this, the dragon horse behind him opened its mouth and said in human language, "Monk, do you still think of me as a disciple? I followed you from so far away just to be your mount. How could you turn a blind eye to me? It's fine if you can fly, but you only know how to walk with your feet. I am the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. Do you think it's easy for me to serve you? You want me to put my face as the 10th prince? It's fine if you don't ride me, but you put these tattered scriptures on my back. I clearly told you that I have a dragon shell here. Isn't it better to put these tattered scriptures in the dragon shell than anything else? If you don't have a Chenkuan bag, but with our friendship, I can give this dragon shell to you." Chapter 4274. Amitabha. Chun Zong did not even turn his head as he chanted the name of Buddha and continued to walk forward. The Confucian cultivator behind Yuan Tongtian retracted his gaze from the distant scenery and glanced at the dragon horse behind Chun Zong. He sneered and said, "One of the requirements of sutra seeking in nirvana is for a monk without any divine powers to walk step by step to Lei Temple. Then from Lei Temple to Longevity Town. If the monk rides you, how can he seek in nirvana? I really don't know what the East Sea Dragon Palace is thinking. Since they want you to get a share of sutra seeking in nirvana, why do they want you to transform into a dragon horse? Even if you meet demons, you can't fight them. You can only be a decoration. Could it be that you've made a mistake and you can only be a horse before you make up for it? Damn it!" Hearing the Confucian cultivator's words, the dragon horse jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He turned his head and shouted, "Who said I made a mistake? Who said I made a mistake? Do you think I want to accompany you here and walk around like a lunatic? I'm willing to wear the white dragon suit and turn into a horse. What can you do about it? Being a horse for the monk is the dragon palace giving face to the Buddha Lord and the immortal emperor. Besides, the monk is not a monk without any divine powers. He has been walking for more than 200 years. If he didn't have any divine powers, he would have turned into a skeleton." "Shut up!" Yuan Tongtian scolded impatiently. "If you two continue to talk nonsense, do you believe that I won't beat the two of you to death? How dare you, how dare you?" The dragon horse became more anxious and shouted, "Why don't you try beating me? Why don't you try beating me? You're just a fire ape with no background. Just because you flattered the monk earlier, you actually became my senior brother. Why don't you take a piss and look at your own face? What qualifications do you have to be my senior brother?" Amitabha. Chun Zong, who was walking in front, finally could not stand it anymore. He turned his head and scolded, "Zhen Feng, you broke the mouth precept again." Bah. The dragon horse who was called Zhen Feng spat. A big mouthful of dragon saliva fell into the snow and smashed a big hole in the ground. Then he continued to scold, "I violated many commandments. Not only the verbal commandments, but also the commandments of anger, lust, and so on." When Chun Zong heard this, his expression changed. He said indifferently, "If that's the case, then Oh, master. Longma Zhenfeng hurriedly changed the topic and trotted over to Chunzong, saying with a smile, "Disciple was just playing with senior brothers. Don't you feel that it's very lonely in the wilderness and the sea of snow? Wouldn't you be happy if your disciple and senior brother were to entertain you?" However, when he saw the sincerity on Chunzang's face, he hurriedly changed his tone and said with a smile, "Senior brother, don't joke with little brother. If little brother takes away your merit, won't your military school fall out with my dragon palace? Wouldn't senior brother's trip to Lei Temple be in vain? Wouldn't you have seen Mahavairakana's face in vain?" Seeing that Zhenfeng was no longer angry, Zhen Han also felt bored and didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head and looked at the surrounding snowy scenery. Her gaze was attracted by a snowy peak in the distant valley. After Chunzong finished explaining, he didn't care if Zhenfeng listened or not. He looked at the place where Yuan Tongtian disappeared with some concern. Then, he took his staff and walked forward. After walking for a few li, he saw a gurgling stream under the snow at the foot of the mountain. Chunzong licked his dry lips and said, "Zhenkong," however, just as he opened his mouth, he smiled bitterly. Standing there, he turned his head and called out to the draconic horse, "Zhenfeng, come here." "Yes, master." The draconic horse Zhenfeng quickly walked in front of Chunzong and asked, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Chunzong smiled and walked to the side of the draconic horse. He reached into the oilcloth and took out a purple gold alms bowl. Then, he walked to the side of the stream and bent down to get some water. He placed it by his mouth and drank a few mouthfuls. "Ayo, master." The draconic horse Zhenfeng made a fuss and said, "No matter what, you should wait for senior brother Zhenkong to come back. If you drink cold water like this, it won't be good for you to have diarrhea. Even if you don't have diarrhea, if you feel uncomfortable anywhere, senior brother Zhenkong will beat us to death." After drinking a few mouthfuls, Chunzong clearly couldn't endure the bone-piercing cold. His face was a little pale and he hurriedly poured the snow water in the purple gold alms bowl. Just as he was about to turn around, he saw the little spirit mouse standing on the mountain peak. At this moment, there was already some snow on the spirit mouse's body. Its body was trembling and its eyes were filled with fear as it stared at the draconic horse. "Say." Chunzong sighed and put down the purple gold alms bowl. With a slightly reproachful voice he said, "Zhenfeng, you're being naughty again." After saying that, Chunzong carefully crossed the stream and climbed up the mountain peak with difficulty. It was very strenuous for him to carry the spirit mouse out of the ice and snow. However, just as his hand was about to touch the spirit mouse, his foot slipped and his body slipped down. Chunzong naturally lowered his head. The moment he lowered his head, the spirit mouse that was originally terrified suddenly grew in size. A demon race shadow that was dozens of feet in size rushed out from its small body. Things happened too suddenly. Draconic horse Zhen Feng and Confucian cultivator Zhen Han didn't expect that there was a demon race hidden within the spirit beast. Their faces turned pale with fright. Just as they were about to make a move, an extremely familiar voice sounded in the air. "Master, be careful." Immediately, a wave of staff shadows appeared out of thin air and fell on the demon race's shadow. The shadow didn't have time to resist before all the shadows were smashed into the spirit mouse's body. Finally, a pitch-black magic staff appeared in the wave of staff shadows and hit the spirit mouse's head. Pooh! With a light sound, the little spirit mouse was smashed into a pile of meat paste by the magic staff. "Damn it!" Draconic horse Zhen Feng let out a long breath and cursed. Another demon beast that was fooled by rumors. If this monk could become immortal after eating it, how could it be your turn? This daddy will be the first to eat it. "Humph, do you still need to say it?" Confucian cultivator Zhan Han coldly snorted. "Of course it's your demon race's great sage. They don't want to see the sutra-seeking extreme bliss be completed smoothly. If they don't cause some trouble, how can they be at ease? What does the demon race's great sage have to do with my dragon palace of the four seas? This daddy thinks. It's your Confucian family." Draconic horse Zhen Feng retorted. "They don't want the sutra-seeking extreme bliss to be completed." Zhen Kong. Chunzong didn't care about the two's battle of words. His face was a bit green as he looked at the sky with an unkind tone and asked, "What are you doing? Why are you starting a massacre again?" At this moment, Yuan Tongtian had already descended from the sky with a tall peach tree on his back. The large peaches on the branches looked very tempting. Hearing Chun Zhang's question, Yuan Tongtian didn't care and casually replied, "That's a demon race's phantom beast. He's hiding in the spirit mouse's body and wants to eat you." "How is that possible?" Chun Zong looked at the mangled corpse of the spirit mouse and was so angry that his lips trembled. Master was clearly looking at the spirit mouse. "When did the phantom beast appear?" "Monk." Yuan Tongtian sized up Chun Zong and said, "That phantom beast appeared when you lowered your head. You don't have spirit sense and don't know the eye-clearing technique, so naturally you can't see it. If you don't believe me, you can ask your 2 disciples." Chapter 4275. Ahem ahem. Senior brother Zhenhan, your battle armor looks really mighty. I wonder which blacksmith master of the Immortal Palace forged it? Draconic horse Zhen Feng coughed and looked at the armor he had been looking at for close to 200 years. He seemed to have discovered something strange and hurriedly asked Zhenhan. Zhenhan said in all seriousness, "Is there a need to ask?" "Naturally, it was forged by the #1 blacksmith master in the world." "Oh, why don't you guess who the #1 blacksmith master in the world is?" "Ayaya, this is not easy to guess." Draconic horse Zhen Feng's face was as if he was thinking hard. Seeing Zhen Feng and Zhen Han talking about him, Zhen Kong smiled coldly and didn't say anything else. However, Chun Zong didn't intend to let him go and said, "Zhen Kong, even if there was a phantom beast, it was enough that you subdued it. There was no need to kill it, right? Moreover, this spirit rat wasn't a phantom beast. What was the point of killing it?" "Monk." Zhen Kong was somewhat impatient and said with a frown, "My strength is limited. It's not possible for me to subdue the phantom beast without injuring you. It's already not bad that I was able to kill it before it could kill you. Zhen Kong, how many times have I told you in the past 200 years? Buddhist disciples should be compassionate and respect life. When we need help, we should always be kind. When we sweep the floor, we're afraid of harming the lives of ants. We should cover the lamp with gauze to protect the moths. Why did you kill it step by step? Although this spirit rat wasn't a human, it was still a life. What was the point of killing this innocent spirit rat and obtaining the General Sutra?" "Monk." Zhen Kong seemed to be used to this, and he didn't get angry. He only said, "The phantom beast has already borrowed the spirit rat's flesh, so killing the phantom beast is equivalent to killing the spirit rat. Moreover, even if I don't touch the spirit rat after killing the phantom beast, it won't live past today." "That's right. Since you knew that the spirit rat would die if the phantom beast died, why didn't you think of a way to subdue the phantom beast?" Chun Zong asked in a somewhat forceful manner. "It's good to have this phantom beast submit to our Buddhist sect. Monk, I've already beaten and killed those that should be killed. Tell me what to do." Zhen Kong was so angry that he laughed and retorted, "You have no idea how many living beings you have killed along the way." Chuan Zong sighed. "You always say that there will be no next time. But when have you ever taken those words to heart? I just want to ask you, will you do it again next time?" "Monk." Zhen Kong tossed the peach tree to the ground and calmly replied, "Don't ask me about this. Ask the demons and humans who want to take your life. As long as they don't want your life, I definitely won't do anything. But if they want to hurt you, I won't show any mercy." Hearing Zhen Kong's words, compassion appeared in Chun Zhang's eyes. All the living beings who had died under Zhen Kong's magic wand in the past 200 years appeared in his mind. He could not help but say, "Since that's the case, you go, Io Master." Seeing that Chun Zong was about to chase Zhen Kong away, Zhen Han hurriedly took a few steps forward and plucked a peach from the peach tree. She handed it to Chun Zong and smiled. "Look, the peach senior brother found is even more juicy than the immortal peaches in the Immortal Palace. Why don't you try it?" Chun Zong looked at the juicy peach. In the end, he could not harden his heart and sighed. "Forget it. This is the last time. If there is a next time, I don't need to say anything. Whatever." Shen Kong did not care at all. He waved his hand as if he was chasing away a fly. "Do whatever you want. If it wasn't for Master." Zhen Kong immediately stopped and looked at Zhen Feng and Zhen Han. The two of them perked up their ears and waited for him to continue. Thus, Zhen Kong shut his mouth for a moment and continued. "Otherwise, who would have the patience to protect you for 200 years? Zhen Feng and Zhen Han could not help but feel slightly disappointed when they saw Zhen Kong being so tight-lipped. They glanced at each other and sneered. They had the same question. Just where did Zhen Kong come from? Just which great saint was behind him? However, it had been more than 200 years and they did not see any clues. In Chun Zhang's eyes, the so-called sutra seeking extreme bliss was a process of seeking the gospel for the millions of Buddhist people in the hidden immortal continent. However, in Zhen Feng and Zhen Han's eyes, it might not be so. Perhaps, it was just a game to obtain merits and benefits. Therefore, it was very important to have a place in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. In fact, long before Chunzong took down the Buddhist decree in the tidal river temple, the Immortal Palace and Leiyin Temple had already discussed this matter. However, this matter did not only involve Buddhism and Confucianism, it also involved the Immortal Palace and various Confucian families and even the demon race. Even when Chunzong began his sutra-seeking extreme bliss journey in the Longevity Town, he did not arrange everything properly. In particular, right after Chunzong left, Xiaohua had a dispute with Sun Ping who was waiting for him at the Liao River. Although the two left the Longevity Town very quickly, the imprint of the Immortal Palace was unavoidable. Therefore, the matter that was already settled changed again. It was not until more than a year after Chunzong left the Longevity Town that a group of forces suddenly discovered that Chunzong had actually accepted a demon race disciple. This disciple seemed to have been accepted overnight, and it also seemed to have been arranged long ago. He was much more powerful than Zhen Han. On the hidden immortal continent, almost all the work was done by Yuan Tongtian. He did not need Zhen Han at all. After watching for a while, Zhen Han got used to it. He also adjusted his attitude. Being the second senior brother was fine. Anyway, he was also here to gain merit. However, at this time, strange news came from the Thousand Demons' sacred territory. The demon clan's great sage did not take action at all. The disciples arranged by the demon clan were still waiting to be subdued by the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect disciples. Chaos, chaos. This was Zhen Han's mood when he heard the news from the Immortal Palace that day. He was almost impulsive that day. He wanted to ask Yuan Tongtian where he came from. Could it be that he jumped out of a stone? However, as a Confucian disciple, he still had the self-restraint and patience. He did not open his mouth and only watched coldly. The Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect were shocked when they received the news. They never thought that there would be a fourth force besides the demon race, the Confucian cultivators, and the Buddhist sect that would disrupt their plans. The first thing they thought of was the Tao sect cultivator who called himself the primordial chaos ancestor. However, they did not understand how the Grand Mist ancestor could know about the arrangement of the sutra-seeking nirvana. How could he send such a powerful fire ape in advance? What made them even more dumbfounded was that whether it was the Immortal Palace or the Great Thunderclap Temple, they could not find the origin of the fire ape. Even if they used great magical powers, they could not find Yuan Tongtian's origin. They could not find any cause and effect. This fire ape was really as Sun Zihan thought. It was like a stone that fell from the sky. Naturally, the Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect had the intention to kill Yuan Tongtian. However, they also saw clearly that the one who really protected Chunzong was Yuan Tongtian. Zhen Han also said clearly that Yuan Tongtian was not interested in the merit of the sutra-seeking nirvana. He only cared about Chunzang's safety. Moreover, the one who accepted Yuan Tongtian was Chunzong himself. In other words, this was Chunzang's own choice. It had nothing to do with the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, or the demon clan. Since it was Chunzang's choice, the Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators had to consider more for Chunzong. After all, the heavenly Tao was flawed. Out of 50, one would escape. Perhaps Chunzong was that one who escaped. In the end, the one who settled this matter was naturally the Mahavairakana revered Buddha. The Buddha Lord formed a Buddha seal with his hands. The Buddha light penetrated the heaven and earth. After a few days, the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's eyes flashed with a strange expression. He said, "Since he wants to come, let him come." Then, the Mahavairakana revered Buddha did not say anything more. He did not give any explanation at all. Since the Buddha Lord of the Buddhist sect did not object, the Immortal Palace naturally had no reason to object. Yuan Tongtian, the disciple with the Buddha name Zhen Kong, sat in the position of the eldest senior brother. Chapter 4276. Since there was Yuan Tong Tian, there would be a demon disciple for the sutra seeking extreme bliss. The demon who was destined to be subdued. His tragic fate would be changed. He would not be beaten by others. He would be subdued by others. However, there was a problem again. The demons were unhappy. This was already agreed upon. How could it be changed just like that? Were they bullying the demons for being inhumane? The Immortal Palace was in a dilemma. There was only so much merit. If there was one more person to share, everyone would have less. The Immortal Palace felt that the Buddhist sect might not be willing. However, to the surprise of the Immortal Palace and the demons, the Buddhist sect made a rare concession in the face of the demons' persistence. The Buddhist sect did not arrange for the Bodhisattva to perform the sutra seeking extreme bliss. There were still 4 of them. However, the Buddhist sect had a condition. This demon disciple could not be a demon from the 1,000 demons sacred realm. The Buddhist sect's reasoning was reasonable. With one less Buddhist disciple, Chun Zhang's merit would be doubled. The demons already had a disciple. Of course, they could not share any extra merit. Otherwise, wouldn't the demons benefit the most from the sutra seeking extreme bliss? It was unknown if there was something fishy between the Dragon Island and the Buddhist sect or if fate had really landed on the Dragon Island. On the 3 continents, other than the Immortal Palace, the Thunder Temple, and the Great Sage Temple, there was only the Dragon Island left. The 3rd disciple was given to the Dragon Island. Of course, the Dragon Island could not send a dragon to be Chun Zhang's disciple. Therefore, the title was given to the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. There were many dragons in the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. However, there were not many who could match the status of Sun Zihan. There was no need to mention the princes of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. None of them would lower their status to be a disciple of a Buddhist sect's bodhisattva. The Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas could not send out an ordinary dragon general. They had to send a leader of the dragon guards. Just as the Immortal Palace was waiting with interest for the Dragon Palace to send out a disciple, Ao Feng appeared. The 10th prince of the Dragon Palace of the East Sea. Everyone knew that the dragon had 9 sons. Each dragon palace only had 9 princes. It was impossible to have one more. This was the legacy of the dragons for many years. However, the Dragon Palace of the East Sea had this 10th prince. The Immortal Palace didn't know how the 10th crown prince came about, but from the Dragon Island's Book of Dragons, it was recorded long ago. It was something that happened before the sutra seeking of extreme bliss. In other words, Ao Feng's birth had nothing to do with the sutra seeking of extreme bliss. Since the 10th prince had nothing to do with nirvana scripture seeking, the Immortal Palace immediately understood the reason why the 10th prince revealed his identity. Whether it was the Dragon Island or the East Sea Dragon Palace, one of them must have found the Lei Temple and given Ao Feng the opportunity to appear in the 3 continents, giving him the opportunity to be recognized by the dragon tribe. Therefore, the Immortal Palace didn't pursue the matter further and agreed to let Ao Feng be the last disciple of the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Moreover, the Immortal Palace didn't propose any other conditions. However, when Ao Feng appeared in front of her, Zhan Han's jaw almost dropped to the ground. Where did the Dragon General and the 10th Prince of the Dragon King go? Why is there only one dragon horse? Didn't they say that Xuanzang could only rely on his own strength to travel from Longevity Town to Lei Temple and then back to Longevity Town from Lei Temple? The East Sea Dragon Palace sent a dragon horse over. It could not carry Xuanzang, nor could it fight. How could it split the merit? Could it be that they were planning to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? Unfortunately, although this dragon horse Zhen Feng was very lively and often caused trouble, he was very tight-lipped about his origin, and even what had happened. No matter how much Zhan Han asked, he still didn't get an answer. After a long time, Zhen Han also lost his patience. After all, the dragon horse Zhen Feng wasn't the only one who was slacking. Wasn't he also hiding behind Zhen Kong and slacking off? It was enough to have Zhen Kong as the eldest senior brother in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Who cares what Zhen Feng thought? However, when the 4 of them arrived at the Lei Temple and saw the Mahayana scriptures such as the Nirvana Sutra, the Bodhisattva Sutra, and other Mahayana scriptures to Xuanzang, Zhan Han suddenly understood everything. He was instantly filled with admiration for the Lei Temple and the Dragon Palace. Because the Lei Temple had clearly stated that the Mahayana Sutra was the breath of the Buddha Lord. No utensils could taint it. Therefore, the Chenkuan pouch, the Chenkuan bracelet, and the dragon shell couldn't be used. They could only be carried by the dragon clan with the bloodline of the heavenly dragon. His grandmother, what kind of reason was this? This was clearly giving merit to dragon horse Zhen Feng. Unfortunately, this dragon horse Zhen Feng seemed to be a simpleton. He didn't understand anything and only wanted to carry Xuanzang. Zhen Han wished he could knock dragon horse Zhen Feng's head on behalf of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. Did you know that your father had done so much for you? Today, Xuanzang was forced to tell the truth. Looking at dragon horse Zhen Feng's attitude, he didn't seem to care at all. Zhen Han couldn't help but despise him. In particular, a secret that I won't tell you if you're not familiar with him, had suddenly spread throughout the 3 continents. It was said that Xuanzang was the reincarnation of a bodhisattva from the Buddhist kingdom. Anyone who could eat a piece of Xuanzang's flesh would gain immortality. Human cultivators were still fine, but the monsters in the 1,000-demon sacred realm couldn't resist this temptation. One after another, they rushed out from their secluded lairs, wanting to realize their beautiful dream of immortality. Although he didn't know where this rumor came from, the effect of this rumor was obvious. Without the Immortal Palace and the Thunder Temple urging the Great Sage Hall to create a few demons and ghosts, the real calamities came one after another. Although the Immortal Palace and Thunder Temple's defenses were tight, if a monster like Zhen Kong could become their disciple, then a monster like the Phantom Beast could also get close. If it wasn't for the powerful eldest senior brother Zhen Kong blocking in front of her, Zhen Han might have died several times already. Therefore, even if Zhen Han knew that Zhen Kong looked down on her, she still tried her best to protect Zhen Kong, helping Xuanzang, who only wanted to pursue the truth of Buddhism, to see the reality clearly. Seeing that Xuanzang and Zhen Kong had a falling out again, and Zhen Kong really had the momentum of not daring to do anything, Zhen Han gave Zhen Feng a look and hurriedly said, "Master, please calm down first. This is all my disciple's fault. Eldest senior brother went to look for food for you, but we actually squabbled on the side, causing you to be in danger. Come, quickly try this peach. It's really delicious." "That's right, master." Dragon horse Zhen Feng also said, "Eldest senior brother has worked hard and made great contributions. For the past 200 years, haven't we relied on eldest senior brother's abilities to safely reach this place? Seeing that the Western Paradise is about to end, and we have to return to the hidden immortal continent, how can you bear to let eldest senior brother leave? Just now, not to mention eldest senior brother, even my heart was about to jump out. After all, that phantom beast had already pounced on master's head. In just a few breaths, master. We'll really enter the cycle of reincarnation. Isn't eldest senior brother anxious to save master? Of course, we Buddhist disciples cannot stain our hands with blood. Eldest senior brother is also in the wrong. Look, even if eldest senior brother doesn't say anything now, he is already regretting it." It was rare for 2 disobedient disciples to speak up for Zhen Kong, so Xuanzang's heart moved a little. He took the peach that Zhen Han passed to him and took a small bite. A sweet peach juice entered his mouth, and Xuanzang's anger subsided a little. However, when he looked at Zhen Kong again, he saw that Zhen Kong was looking at the sky, seemingly in the direction of the Golden Mountain Temple. He didn't know what Zhen Kong was thinking. Although Zhen Kong didn't say anything, the regret in Zhen Kong's words clearly didn't exist. Xuanzang opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he had already said enough in the past 200 years. What was the use of him saying anything more? For a moment, his heart felt stifled. He wasn't an idiot. 200 years was enough for him to see some of the truth about the Western Paradise scripture seeking. However, he didn't care. After all, the Mahayana Buddhist scripture he obtained was a real thing. Being able to let the Buddhist sect's Buddhist light illuminate the longevity town was his greatest hope for this trip. However, what was his greatest hope? In this world, there was probably no one who could understand it. Not even Mahavairakana. Chapter 4277. Thinking of this, Xuanzang lost his appetite. He raised his head and looked towards the west. Other than a tall snow mountain, there was only the gloomy sky. Snowflakes were still falling from the red clouds, showing no signs of stopping. The gloomy weather was a day that made people angry. "Let's go." Xuanzang finished the peach in a few bites and carefully buried the peach pit in the snow. "Master, you should eat a few more." Zhan Han chased after him and said, "There are so many peaches. If you don't eat them, wouldn't it be a waste? You guys eat them or leave them for the next meal." Xuanzang didn't even turn his head. He leaned on his staff and walked forward. Zhan Han faintly smiled and nodded. "Yes, master." After saying that, he waved his hand and the peach tree immediately landed on Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's back. It smashed the tarpaulin, as if the book under the tarpaulin wasn't the scripture. However, Longma Zhenfeng wasn't going to let it go. He jumped and tried to throw the peach tree off while cursing. "Damn it, I'm still the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. How can you throw a peach tree on my back? You clearly have your own Qiankuan bag. Can't you just put it in there? What do you know?" Seeing that Xuanzang had exposed the matter, Zhan Han no longer concealed it and scolded. "This is the food for the next meal. If you don't carry it, who will? If I put it on your back, it will be your merit. If I put it in my Qiankuan bag, it will be dog shit. All of you shut up." Zhen Kong was very impatient and scolded. "Why aren't you hurrying? Do you believe that I won't kill you with my staff? Damn it, why don't you try and kill me? Even this monk doesn't dare to say such words." Dragon Horse Zhen Feng immediately stopped arguing with the peach tree and turned to Zhen Kong. Why would Zhen Kong care about him? He still carried the magic wand on his shoulder and lazily followed behind Xuanzang. "Damned fire ape!" Dragon Horse Zhen Feng cursed. Seeing that Zhen Han had also followed, he added, "Damned Confucian cultivator." Unfortunately, scolding was just scolding. After scolding, Draconic Horse Zhen Feng still raised its hooves and followed behind the three. The snowy mountain looked very close, but it took them more than 10 days to reach it. In these 10 days, it was snowing heavily and there was no sign of stopping. Zhan Han raised his eyes to look at the snowy mountain, then turned back to look at the footprints on the snowy ground. The further the footprints were, the more unclear they were. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Was it worth it to walk such a short distance for more than 10 days? In the past, as long as he moved his body, the great snow mountain would have already been under his feet. But today, he actually walked over with his feet. However, when Zhen Han turned his head around, he saw that there was no longer a smooth path ahead. There was only a small path leading to the great snow mountain. He could only mutter, "I don't believe that this great snow mountain can't kill a monk like you." Then, he carried the Buddhist scriptures and stepped onto the path with difficulty. Boom! Just as the four of them stepped onto the path, a thunderclap sounded from the western sky, shaking the four of them to raise their heads. High up in the sky, tiny lightning threads were like hundreds of millions of dragons cruising in the sky. In the center of the lightning threads, there was an abnormal twisting vortex that was either elongated or extended. It even condensed into a strange black hole. In just a few breaths of time, the lightning threads expanded again and rushed towards the great snow mountain. It was like a thunderstorm that covered the entire sky. At the same time, as the thunderstorm roared, the twisting vortex suddenly overflowed like bubbles. A few, dozens, hundreds, and finally tens of thousands of vortexes, spinning rapidly in the thunderstorm. These vortexes were of different sizes and depths, and even their twisting was different. "Disciple, what's going on?" Chunzong was surprised and turned to ask Zhen Kong naturally. "How would I know?" A hint of surprise flashed in Zhen Kong's eyes, and he suddenly felt excited. He didn't feel this excited even when he kowtowed to Mahavairakana in the Thunder Temple. However, he still replied coldly, "Even if the great saint of the demon clan came, you would still have to walk up the great snow mountain step by step." Chunzong felt disappointed for no reason and was about to walk up the mountain. However, at this moment, at the peak of the great snow mountain, a whimpering sound was also heard. Then, in the sky above the great snow mountain, layers of strange green light appeared and rushed into the void like an umbrella. Then, the lightning that appeared seemed like a dragon that smelled blood, crossing the space and pouncing on the green light. When the thunderbolts fell into the green light, the thunderbolts that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. Layers of golden light sparkled like the setting sun shining on the surface of the water. As the golden light gradually grew larger, it looked like dragon scales that covered the sky. "Everyone look! Lord Dragon God has descended?" Dragon Horse Zhen Feng walked at the back and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, afraid that Zhen Han couldn't hear him. However, before he could finish speaking, "Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Dipankara Buddha. The chanting of 10,000 Buddhas appeared again, and the dragon scales turned into a bright Buddhist light. Not only did it illuminate the sky, but it also illuminated the great snow mountain and the snowy plains. At the end of the Buddhist light, countless jade talismans appeared. Within the jade talismans, celestial maidens, celestial flowers, celestial dragons, and various Buddhist fruits appeared one after another. An indescribable Buddhist aura slowly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain. Namo Amitba Buddha. Seeing this strange scene, the surprise in Chun Zhang's eyes became even more intense. He chanted a Buddhist mantra and knelt down, kowtowing toward the west. Damn it! Zhen Han narrowed his eyes and looked at this strange scene as if he was admiring the scenery. However, he felt disdain in his heart. What is the Thunder Temple planning? They haven't even reached the Longevity Town, so why did they come with such a big formation? Could it be that this great snow mountain has some secret that I, a Confucian cultivator, don't know? Monk, what's going on? Long Ma Zhenfeng was extremely disappointed and shouted, "How did my Lord Dragon God become a Buddhist kingdom?" Not to mention the four of them being inexplicably surprised. Even a bodhisattva sitting cross-legged on a six-tusked white elephant in a dilapidated small temple halfway up the Great Snow Mountain also had a look of surprise on his face. This bodhisattva was wearing a 5 Buddha golden crown and a kasaya. His left hand was holding a scepter and his expression was solemn. Wasn't he Samantabhadra Bodhisattva? However, when the dragon scales in the sky turned into Buddhist light, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face was filled with ecstasy. He almost couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Namo Maitreya Buddha, I really didn't expect that disciple's guess was actually true. Buddha Lord really came to this world." When disciples saw Buddha Lord's body that day, I was still hesitating. Not only did Buddha Lord's cultivation method change, he also didn't have any impression of his previous life. Even Mahavairakana was unable to see through Buddha Lord's origin and was unable to confirm his identity. If disciple wasn't merciful enough to see Buddha Lord's physical appearance, how could disciple recognize Buddha Lord's current physical body? Now, it seems that Buddha Lord must have encountered a great problem during his reincarnation, so he had no choice but to erase his own reincarnation imprint. Fortunately, disciple was arranged by Buddha Lord to come to this world and found the little exquisite temple of Tantric Buddhism that was built tens of thousands of years ago in Layin Temple. Disciple knew that this was the key to Buddha Lord's awakening, so I came here first. Buddha Lord's current physical body hasn't even stepped into the little exquisite temple, yet he was able to trigger the Buddhist kingdom's vision. This little exquisite temple must be where Buddha Lord's physical body is awakening. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Disciple has gone through untold hardships to welcome the awakening of the future Buddha Lord's reincarnation. Disciple's great wish can finally be realized. The door of the Shaolinglong Temple was once again pushed open. Jin Kong's surprised voice rang out. "Why is there an old monk here? Could he be a demon?" Following Jin Kong's words, he strode past Chun Zhang and stood in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He waved his magic wand in the air and looked at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva vigilantly. "Bullshit! What demon?" Draconic Horse Jin Feng's voice rang out. "In your eyes, there are only two types of creatures in this world. One type won't harm a monk, and the other type will harm a monk. Do you think an old monk can harm a monk?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't care about the quarrel between the two. He only held a broom and swept the snow on the ground. The snow had already been swept away when he entered the Shaolinglong Temple. Now, he only swept away a thin layer of snow. Zhenkong's eyes glowed with golden light. He took a closer look but couldn't see anything. However, just as he was about to raise his magic wand, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had seen something. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Then, he placed the magic wand on his shoulder and moved to the side. "Elder." Seeing Zhen Kong move aside, Chun Zong quickly walked over and put his palms together. Disciple Chun Zong wanted to greet him, but Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't seem to see him. He turned around and swept his gaze elsewhere. Chun Zong helplessly walked forward and grabbed the broom. He smiled and said, "Old master, you're old. Rest on the side. As for the rest, disciple will help you sweep." "Oh, little monk!" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's body trembled. He looked up at Chunzong and said, "All right, since you want to sweep, then sweep more." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva let go of the broom and looked at Zhen Kong. His squinted eyes suddenly widened. He pointed at Xian Kong in shock and shouted, "Demon, demon!" "Hee, if I'm a demon, then what are you?" Although Zhen Kong saw something, he still didn't show any respect. He rudely retorted, "He's a demon too?" Draconic horse Zhenfeng was shocked and hurriedly took a few steps back. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face turned pale. He pulled on Chunzang's sleeve and shouted, "What? Little monk, your horse can speak human language? It's a demon too?" Chunzong held the broom with one hand and supported the old monk with the other. He replied with a slightly loud voice, "Old master, don't be afraid. This draconic horse is this poor monk's disciple. Although it has the appearance of a draconic horse, it's actually a dragon. It's of the same bloodline as my Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly dragon." "Monk." Draconic horse Zhenfeng was unhappy and shouted, "How can your Buddhist sect's heavenly dragon be compared to my Dragon Island's bloodline?" "Namo Amitabha." The old monk was still afraid. His withered vine-like hand tightly held onto Chunzong and shouted, "Since it's a dragon, then it's a demon." "I remember that when I was young, my house was next to a river. Dragons would often appear there. Every year, they would eat little boy." "That old man." Draconic horse Zhenfeng was even more unhappy. He almost jumped up and shouted, "That's a flood dragon. To put it bluntly, it's a python spirit. How can it be compared to this old man?" "Namo Amitabha." The old monk's face turned pale. He hid beside Chunzong and secretly looked at Draconic horse Zhenfeng and said, "You still say that he's your disciple. Look at him, he doesn't even call you master. How can he be your disciple? Such a disciple. What do you want him for?" "Damn it." Draconic horse Zhenfeng angrily said, "What does it have to do with you whether I call you master or not?" "Zhenfeng." Chunzong finally couldn't bear it and shouted, "Go outside the temple and wait. Don't scare this old man." Draconic horse Zhenfeng smiled and said, "If master doesn't worry about this disciple carrying the scripture outside, then this disciple will go. Master, you don't need to worry about this." Zhen Han, who had been watching from the side for a long time, immediately walked over and said with a smile, "This disciple will take the scripture from junior brother's back and then let senior brother kick him down the mountain." "Zhen Han." Draconic horse Zhenfeng was somewhat flustered. "You dare? I'll give you 10 times the courage. Why wouldn't I dare?" Zhen Han replied with interest, "You should ask senior brother this question." After saying this, Zhen Han half-jokingly pulled Draconic horse Zhenfeng towards a corner of the small temple, away from the old monk. As for Zhen Kong, he had already jumped onto the wall of the small temple. He raised his eyes and looked at the Buddhist light and rosy clouds in the sky. He listened to the inexplicable rumbling sounds with an expectant look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. "Hee, I've let this old man see a joke." Chunzong smiled and helped the old monk to the side of the main hall. He used his kasaya to clean the dust on the steps and invited the old monk to sit down. He said, "These disciples of this poor monk are naughty and often inadvertently violate the precepts. This poor monk usually doesn't teach them well. This is all this poor monk's fault. However, these disciples of this poor monk have good hearts. The secular world once said that if one doesn't teach well, it's the father's fault. If one doesn't teach strictly, the teacher will be lazy. You are indeed not a qualified teacher." The old monk sat down, his eyes still narrowed as he indifferently replied. Chunzong could only bitterly smile. After the old monk sat down, he took a broom and began to sweep the floor of the exquisite temple. It was just like the day when Xiaohua came to the exquisite temple. Before the Buddhist light descended, there was heavy snow. No matter how he swept, he couldn't catch up with the falling snow. As Chuanzong walked closer, the Buddhist light in the sky became brighter and more transparent. The Buddhist kingdom in the Buddhist light also became clearer. The faint chanting of the 10,000 Buddhas seemed to be right beside him. At this time, let alone Zhen Han, even Dragon Horse Zhenfeng couldn't help but calm down. He raised his head and looked at the sky uneasily. Lowering his voice he asked, "Second senior brother, what's going on? Could it be that this monk really has some background?" "Nonsense." Jinhan couldn't help but scold. If he doesn't have any background, how could he go to Lei Yin Temple to obtain scriptures? Do you think that there are millions of Buddhas in Western Paradise and everyone can go there to obtain scriptures? Didn't you see many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Lei Yin Temple? This monk might be one of the Bodhisattvas. Damn it. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng muttered. Then didn't I offend this monk? Offend the future Bodhisattva? Hee, so what if you offend him? Zhen Han laughed. As long as you don't get kicked out by him, as long as you reach Longevity Town. Oh, it seems that we don't have to wait that long. As long as Master achieves enlightenment today, our Master and disciple status will be confirmed. If he wants to say anything or do anything, it won't be that easy. What can he do to me? Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was a little scared. Actually, thinking about it now, Master is very good to me. I always make him angry, but he never gets angry. Bullshit. Zhen Han glared at him and transmitted her voice. Do you think he's not angry? But what's the use of him being angry? He said that he wants to kick you out, but can he kick you out? I'm afraid that the only person he can kick out is eldest senior brother. However, he can't bear to kick out eldest senior brother. After all, in these 200 years, it was eldest senior brother who worked hard. If he kicks eldest senior brother out, he might not even be able to keep his life. Damn it, how do you know so much? Dragon Horse Zhen Feng said enviously. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why should I tell you? Zhen Han stole a glance at the sky above his head. The gathered Buddha light seemed to have condensed into a huge Buddha statue. Between the lines of the Buddha statue, there was a river of faith flashing. He was even more shocked and replied absent-mindedly. You're my second senior brother. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng shouted anxiously. If you don't tell me, who will? Zhen Han became even more anxious and said, Damn it, you don't want to live anymore? Why are you so loud? Aren't you afraid of being heard by others? Don't you know how to transmit sound? And Dragon Horse Zhen Feng didn't dare to say more and only replied with a single word. Zhen Han was very satisfied with Zhen Feng's attitude and said with a smile, If you treat this monk as your master, then maybe I'll treat you as my junior brother. Why should this monk be my master? Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was the first to speak, but he immediately came back to his senses and shouted back. Because of that. Zhen Han pointed at the Buddha statue in the sky and didn't say anything else. What is that? Dragon Horse Zhen Feng looked at the dazzling scene in the sky. His fist-sized eyes reflected the Buddha light and the grayish-white color of the overlapping Buddha light. At this time, Chun Zong had already walked to the front of the hall and was about to step over the threshold. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha. The whole hall suddenly lit up and Buddhist chants resounded. Chun Zong was shocked. He looked into the hall and saw that it was empty. The golden body of Maitreya Buddha was lying there casually. This golden body was unusually fat, with its chest exposed. It had a very warm smile on its face. In its left hand was a small bag, and in its right hand was a thick prayer bead. The Buddha's light was emitted from the golden body, but the sound of chanting came from the void. This Buddha light not only illuminated Zhen Kong who was standing at the side of the hall, but also illuminated the incense table and the two thick red candles on it. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha had already entered the hall and stood respectfully beside the incense table. As he chanted, he lit up the red candles. At the same time, incense appeared on the fist-sized incense burner in the middle of the red candles. As the red bricks were lit, the incense also burned. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha? Chun Zong was shocked and hurriedly stepped into the hall. Why is Bodhisattva here? Forgive this disciple's poor eyesight, Bodhisattva. Please forgive this disciple. As he spoke, Chun Zong hurriedly bowed. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha didn't dare to let Chun Zong bow. He hurriedly put his palms together and Chun Zong immediately couldn't bow. He rushed to say, Disciple Samantabhadra has come to the Western Paradise to welcome Namo Maitreya Buddha's return. What? Namo Maitreya Buddha? Chun Zong was stunned and said in surprise, Bodhisattva isn't joking with disciple, right? Disciple. Disciple is the reincarnation of Namo Maitreya Buddha? That's right. Buddha Lord is naturally the reincarnation of Namo Maitreya Buddha in this life. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha nodded and said, Disciple spent 2 rounds of the golden body and sacrificed 1,000,000 merit points to know that Buddha Lord had come to the Western paradise in this life. Disciple then spent hundreds of years to find the tantra of Xilinglong Temple in the Great Snow Mountain. At the same time, Buddha Lord used his physical body to make a great wish that mortals couldn't fulfill. He did a good deed of seeking scriptures in the Western paradise. Buddha Lord, look at the Great Snow Mountain now. The Buddha light is shining and the faith is like a river. It has become the center of attention of the entire Western paradise. Even Mahavairakana world-honored Buddha and Dipankara world-honored Buddha can't send their Buddha thoughts here. If Buddha Lord isn't Namo Maitreya Buddha, then who is? As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's words, the entire hall suddenly disappeared. The strange phenomenon in the sky fell into Chun Zhang's eyes. Chun Zhang couldn't help but put his palms together and said, Namo Amitba. Disciple always felt that this hall was so familiar. So that's how it is. As Chun Zhang said that, he looked at the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha in the hall again. A true sense of familiarity rose from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't help but smile. As he smiled, the entire hall immediately surged with Buddhist lotuses and heavenly flowers fell from the sky. Countless fairies appeared in the void and chanted the Buddha Lord's hymns. However, that was all. After the grand scene, there were no other strange phenomena. Even the Buddha light above his head was still slowly gathering and didn't really fall. Chun Zhang didn't understand. He turned to look at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was also a little embarrassed. He put his palms together and said, Buddha Lord, please wait a moment. At this time, the mud wall of the hall had disappeared. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha could easily see the situation in the left and right side halls. He scanned with his Buddha consciousness and was shocked. At this moment, a soft cracking sound rang out. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was stunned. He turned to look at the source of the sound and saw that the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha had strangely cracked open like a centipede. Boom! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's mind went blank. The cracking sound was like thunder in his ears. He muttered in disbelief. The Buddha position has changed hands? No. Impossible. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo knows how you and I usually behave. What's the point of showing off now? You and I had better hide here and wait patiently for Master to attain Buddhahood so that we can bask in his glory. Zhan Kong naturally wasn't as despicable as Zhan Han thought. He just didn't want to put Xuanzang in danger. Although he knew that he wasn't a match for the one who came, he still urged his body and rushed forward. Unfortunately, before he could fall, he saw a black cloud falling from the sky and instantly landing in front of the 6-tusked white elephant. The 6-tusked white elephant was shocked and quickly retreated. At the same time, the 6 tusks suddenly left its body and turned into flying swords that pierced the black cloud. Clang! 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 A series of sounds rang out as the white tusks rushed into the black cloud. However, they only managed to disperse the dark cloud a little. The 5-colored light within the dark cloud reappeared and blocked the white tusks. The white tusks of the white tusks disappeared in the void. The dark cloud continued to rush towards the exquisite temple. A 5-colored halo that seemed to be on the same side as the screen fell with a whoosh and smashed towards the 6-tusked white elephant. Although the 6-tusked white elephant had already retreated, the 5-colored halo had already descended while its body was still in the air. How dare you! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Daxing frowned. An 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared under his feet to support him. He waved the jade scepter in his hand and a huge lotus appeared out of thin air, blocking the 6-tusked white elephant. When the 5-colored halo saw that Lianhe had blocked it, it suddenly sped up and landed on the 6-tusked white elephant's shadow. Oh whoa! The 6-tusked white elephant let out a blood-curdling screech. All of its shadows were split into 6 pieces, and its body was already drenched in blood. Clang! At this time, the huge lotus rushed into the 5-colored halo. In the sound of metal clanging, the five-colored halo was shattered. At the same time, the lotus turned into specks of Buddhist light and fell into the air. Evildoer, eat this grandpa's staff. Before the specks of Buddhist light fell, a fiery figure rushed out from the shattered Buddhist light. A voice that could almost roar through the heavens and earth sounded. Xueqi held the devil wand in his hand and rushed towards the dark cloud. Jing! A hoarse voice came from the dark cloud. Are you the fire ape that protects the human race? Xueqi naturally didn't say anything. His devil wand fell into the dark cloud like a thunderbolt. With a boom, the five-colored halo was swung out from the dark cloud like a screen. However, this time, it didn't land on Xueqi. Instead, it landed on the devil wand. Boom! With a loud sound, Xueqi's arms went numb and the web between his thumb and forefinger became hot. He couldn't hold on to the devil wand anymore. Whoa! It flew into the air. Before Xueqi could move his body to grab the devil wand, the five-colored halo rose into the sky. Whoosh! The halo flashed and the devil wand was actually shattered into 6 pieces. Damn it, damn it, damn it! When Xueqi saw that the magic wand was destroyed, his eyes immediately turned blood red. He cursed angrily and flames flickered around his body. His ape body involuntarily swelled up. In just a short moment, a 300-meter-tall fire ape appeared in the air. Damn it! This fire ape is indeed powerful. Longma Zhenfeng was somewhat flabbergasted. Previously, he only had the strength of a 4th-grade elemental energy. Now, I'm afraid that he has reached the 5th grade? So what if he's at the 5th grade? Zhan Han understood and rejoiced in Xueqi's misfortune. The 6-tusked white elephant has the strength of a 6th-grade elemental energy. Even the 6-tusked white elephant was defeated. How could this monkey be a match for it? If Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wasn't here, today would be the day of his death. Indeed, just as Zhan Han said, the moment the fire ape's avatar appeared, a voice came from the black cloud. Is this the famous fire ape's avatar? Did my great-grandson die under this Dharmakaya? What a joke! How could such a small trick hurt my good grandson? As the voice spoke, a 5-colored light rushed out from the black cloud. However, this time, the light turned into a wave and fell from the sky. Swish! Under the light, Xueqi didn't dodge at all. Not only were the flames around his body extinguished, his body was also riddled with holes and rapidly returned to its original form. Damn it! Xueqi seemed to rather die than submit. He forcefully struggled and opened his mouth, wanting to spit out the demon core. Enough! A sneer came from the black cloud. You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with your insignificant methods? If not for the fact that you're just a puppet, I would have killed you long ago. As the voice spoke, countless black strands appeared in the air around Xueqi. They were like millions of little snakes that imprisoned Xueqi's body. Namo Maitreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya chanted and appeared beside Xueqi. With a wave of his jade scepter, Buddhist light fell into the air like swords and dispelled the countless black threads. Then, the Buddhist light swept Xueqi away. However, at this moment, another wild laughter came from the black cloud. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked. Chapter 4281. Following his words, the space within a few hundred miles began to vibrate. The 5-colored starlight that had previously filled the sky fell from the sky. At the same time, the 5-colored starlight that had appeared at the feet of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Majesty also began to roll up wildly, trapping him in the domain of the 5-colored starlight. Sensing the power of the 5-colored starlight, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and slapped the top of his head. Boom! The Buddhist light gushed out and turned into tens of thousands of lotuses to protect him and Xueqi. At the same time, the 8th-grade Buddhist lotus under his feet also overflowed with Buddhist light. It suddenly expanded and protected him. Countless golden runes surged around his body. Amidst the chanting of thousands of Buddhas, the golden body of the Buddha appeared. What's the use of this golden body of the Buddha? Break! Inside the dark clouds, there was still no sign of the demon's true form. However, with a low roar, the 5-colored starlight that filled the sky broke through the air. The lotuses were smashed into pieces by the 5-colored starlight. The The space that was enveloped by the Buddha's light began to collapse. Namu Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed slightly. The mirror behind his head overflowed with Buddhist light. Countless streams of faith flowed out of the mirror and turned into thumb-sized lotuses that flew into the sky again. Once the Buddhist light and lotuses appeared, the entire space stabilized again. At the same time, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva raised his hand and waved it. The jade rui flashed across the mirror and hundreds of Buddhist kingdoms fell into it. Roar! Dozens of heavenly dragons flew out of the void and surrounded the jade rui as they fell towards the dark clouds. However, the space where the jade rui landed was shattered. The dark clouds didn't even have a chance to escape. The Buddhist light suddenly appeared and shattered all the dark clouds. The dark clouds disappeared, revealing the true form of the demon within the dark clouds. A 5-colored shell appeared in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. There were countless strange patterns engraved on the shell, and the 5-colored light was produced from these patterns. Boom! The space within 100 miles of the shell was completely confined. The jade scepter carried the power of the dragon and elephant, mixed with the power of the Buddhist kingdom, and fell on the 5-colored light. Amidst the glaring Buddhist light, the 5-colored light of the shell also emitted an extremely bright brilliance, entangling with the Buddhist light. The whole world was trembling. The entire snow mountain was shaking. Whether it was the Buddhist light or the dark clouds, they were all shattered in the trembling. The 5-colored shell was shot into the void and shadows appeared in the air. However, when Samantabhadra Bodhisattva lifted the jade rui, a laugh sounded in the void again. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked again. The Bodhisattva of the Thunder Temple is so. Damn it! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was rarely angry. He cursed in a low voice and opened his mouth. Countless heavenly flowers fell madly towards the main hall of the exquisite temple as if he wanted to protect Xuanzang in the exquisite temple. Unfortunately, before the heavenly flowers fell, the sky above the exquisite temple lit up like a mountain. The 5-colored light soared into the sky again. The shell that was shot into the void had unknowingly moved to the top of the exquisite temple. The opened shell covered the entire main hall. The heavenly flowers fell on the 5-colored light and turned into Buddhist light. Master! Zhunfeng and Zhunhan shouted and rushed out at the right time to the main hall. Unfortunately, before they could get close, they were pushed back by the 5-colored light. Evildoer! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva roared and raised the jade rui again. He scolded angrily. Xuanzang is the sutra seeker of nirvana that my Thunder Temple and the Immortal Palace found together. His safety concerns the safety of the 3 continents. If you hurt him, don't blame the Buddhist sect and the Confucian sect for joining forces to attack the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. Oh my! The voice in the shell was very strange. You scared me to death. So this is the sutra seeker that the Confucian sect and the Buddhist sect found together. It concerns the safety of the 2 sects of the human race? However, I heard that the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra has already been obtained. Let this little pawn of the Dragon Palace carry it to the hidden immortal continent? Why do you still need this sutra seeker? Quickly release Xuanzang. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was somewhat helpless and shouted. Xuanzang must personally bring the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra back to the Longevity Town. Otherwise, this sutra seeker of nirvana will not be considered finished. Yes. Don't worry, Samantabhadra. I will definitely let this little monk go. Moreover, I will definitely not harm a single hair on his head. The voice was very calm. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this and could not help but feel relieved. He nodded and said, since you are so tactful, as long as you release Xuanzang, I will not pursue this matter. However, before he could finish, the voice interrupted him. I just want to live forever and eat a piece of Xuanzang's flesh. Impudent! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva felt like he was being played. He sneered and said, that is just a lie that the primordial chaos ancestor instigated the demon race to destroy the sutra seeker of nirvana. How can you believe that? If it was in the past, I would naturally not believe it. However, today, I saw the phenomenon of nirvana on the Great Snow Mountain. How can I not believe it? The voice was very proud. The scattered light on the shell shrank and shrank as if it was laughing maniacally. Before the physical body of reincarnation reaches nirvana, isn't it the primer for the elixir of immortality? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed. His originally compassionate face turned cold. He said word by word, "This must be what the primordial chaos ancestor told you? The Tao sect is good at stealing the yin and yang of heaven and earth and doing things that harm the harmony of heaven and earth. Using my physical body to refine pills may have some magical effects. However, you must know that the reincarnation of a Buddha carries karma. How can the Tao sect's pills remove this karma? Your strength is now on the verge of the upper 8th grade of origin energy. The demon race's great sage position is in sight. It is unwise to ruin your future for the sake of immortality. If there is no limit to life, the great sage and the Buddha Lord are nothing." The great demon seemed to be moved by Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. "I see." When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this, he immediately understood. He smiled and said, "I already know. If you let Xuanzang go, I can guarantee that I will personally go to Mahavairakana and ask for one for you. What do you think?" The demon in the shell sounded hesitant. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took advantage of the situation and said, "Don't worry. I already know about your background and I also know about the existence of that person. You definitely did not get that person's permission to come out this time. Otherwise, that person would definitely not let you come. Don't you think so?" How do you know?" The demon was shocked and asked hurriedly, "What's so difficult about that?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, "How many demons in the world can have the 5-colored halo? My Lei temple is in charge of everything in the world. How can I not know about that person's existence?" "Alright." The demon in the shell saw that its background was exposed and did not want to cause any more trouble. It took a step back and said, "I can release this monk, but you must give me that fire ape." "Why do you want Zhen Kong?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was surprised. "He is only protecting Xuanzang's disciple. He killed my great-grandson." The demon gritted its teeth and said, "If I don't capture him and skin him alive, how can I put down my face?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was in a difficult position. Looking at the demonic creature's appearance, it must have been tricked by the Grand Mist ancestor, and the great-grandson he mentioned must have been in the same situation. However, his great-grandson had become a sacrifice in the sutra-seeking extreme bliss tribulation, completing Xuanzang's tribulation. Since he was strong enough, he had blackmailed the Buddhist sect. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he closed it again. He might not know who this demon's great-grandson was, but the Buddhist sect's Arhat in charge of the tribulation would definitely know. If the culprit was Zhen Kong, it would be better to say that it was the Grand Mist ancestor or some other Arhat. How could Samantabhadra Bodhisattva say that? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva could only ponder for a moment. He glanced at the wounded Zhen Kong hiding in his Buddhist light and said, "Zhen Kong is right here. You can come and take him at any time. However, you should let Xuanzang out first and ask him. After all, he is Zhen Kong's master." Zhen Kong was powerlessly lying in the air. The demon's 5-colored halo was extremely strange. Not only did it destroy his physical body, but it also prevented his physical body from recovering. Moreover, it was corroding his heart and lungs at an extremely fast speed. Zhen Kong circulated his cultivation technique to resist. He saw everything that happened in front of him. Perhaps he already knew his ending, but there was no cowering or fear in his eyes. "Haha. Samantabhadra, are you trying to shirk responsibility?" The demon found it funny when he heard Huang Xiaolong's words. "The little monk is in my hands. His life and death is up to my will. Can he object? Why don't you just send Zhen Kong over? Why go through all this trouble?" "Namu Maitreya." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva waved his hand and Zhen Kong was sent to him. He said, "Ask Xuanzang. As long as he nods, I will immediately hand Zhen Kong over to you." "You really took off your pants to fart. What an unnecessary move." The demon was a little impatient. The light from the shell spread out and revealed Xuanzang's figure. He said coldly, "Little monk, you already know the origin of this matter. Do you want to be eaten by me? Or do you want Zhen Kong to come with me?" "Namu Amitba." Xuanzang didn't hesitate at all. He chanted the name of Buddha. "How can I let my disciple die for me? I am willing to go with you." "Ah?" The demon was completely stunned. You want to be eaten by me? Is there something wrong with your brain?" "Xuanzang, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was also very anxious. He shouted, "Don't forget your responsibility. Don't forget the great wish you made in the longevity town. Sacrificing Xueqi can save countless lives." Chapter 4282. Xuanzang took a deep breath and looked at Xueqi. "Yes, I remember my great wish. I'm willing to let my Buddha light shine on the hidden immortal. I also hope that the kind men and women of the 3 continents will listen to the teachings of my Mahayana Sutra. But Xueqi is also a living being. Not to mention the fact that he has protected me for 200 years. Even if he's a complete stranger, I have no right to decide his life and death. In this world, the only one who can decide my life and death is myself. I'm willing to exchange my life for Xueqi's." "Idiot! Idiot!" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva couldn't help but scold. "Xuanzang, not to mention that just the fact that you're responsible for the Sutra of Nirvana means that you can't talk about life and death. Your life and death no longer belongs to you but to the Thunder Temple and the Immortal Palace. Your death could lead to the deaths of millions and millions of lives." After hearing Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's words, Xuanzang felt an inexplicable sense of disgust. He was extremely disgusted by this act of sacrificing oneself for the greater good. Moreover, he seemed to have heard some other meaning from the words. However, he didn't show it. Instead, he put his palms together and said, "Namo Amitabha. I've already obtained the Mahayana Sutra from the Thunder Temple. After I go, I only need Xueqi, Xuanhan, and Xuanfeng to deliver the sutra to the immortal town. Compared to the sutra, my life and death is no longer important." "No, you must deliver the sutra to the immortal town's Rivertide Temple." "Why must I deliver it personally?" Xuanzang asked in surprise. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva clenched his teeth and said patiently, "There's no need to talk about this now. If you don't make a decision, then I'll help you." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was just about to speak when a 5-colored halo appeared around his body. His hand lightened as Xueqi disappeared into thin air. The monster's voice sounded triumphant again. "Since it's so difficult, why don't you just let me take them all? How dare you?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked and waved the jade rui again. Rumble. At this moment, there was another thunderous sound in the sky above the great snow mountain. The black and white color that was previously hidden behind the light of Buddha, and later covered by the demonic creature's 5-colored halos and dark demonic clouds suddenly shone brightly. Moreover, thick lightning threads that were even more vigorous than horned dragons surged out from these black and white patterns. Lightning energy that exceeded everyone's understanding seeped out from these lightning threads and frantically covered the 10,000-mile radius of the Great Snow Mountain. What was special was that when these thunder threads appeared, the power of thunder within hundreds of thousands of miles was stimulated. Moreover, the Buddha light that had almost collapsed from the impact of the 5-colored halo actually became more solid. Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra didn't know what had happened, but when he saw the Buddha statue become more solid, his heart calmed down. Buzz buzz. Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra's heart had just calmed down when he saw that in the space sealed by the thunderlights, endless movements appeared around the Buddha statue. The heaven and earth within 1,000 miles shook, and the wind and clouds changed colors. Endless power of faith was born from the void, and poured down on the Buddha statue like a waterfall. The vast power of faith fell into the mirror behind the Buddha statue, and the light on the mirror became more and more resplendent, as if a scorching sun was gradually being born. Under the scorching sun, the Buddha statue became more and more plump, and it gradually became taller and bigger, and gradually filled the entire center of the thunder lights. Nanwu Maitreya Buddha has attained fruition? Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra was stunned again. He really didn't understand. He had thought that Xuanzang was Nanwu Maitreya's present reincarnation body, and that he would attain fruition today. However, when Xuanzang entered the main hall, other than the phenomenon of fruition on the surface, there was no substantial movement at all. Now, when Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra gave up on this idea, the phenomenon of Nanwu Maitreya Buddha's fruition appeared again. However, when he saw that the phenomenon of fruition stopped in the sky and didn't fall, and Xuanzang was still in the hands of the great demon with an unpredictable background, Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra understood that Xuanzang was definitely not the Buddha who had attained fruition. Nanwu Maitreya Buddha's throne has changed hands. This is a major event that has never happened since the creation of the world. I don't know which powerful Buddha Lord took the throne from Namo Maitreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya had already understood the outcome. He pondered with mixed feelings. This is the greatest secret of the Buddhism sect. I'm lucky enough to see it. Whether it's a blessing or a misfortune, it's all up to me. Boom. Just as Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra's thoughts raced, the sun-like light suddenly produced a 1,000-mile thick pillar of Buddha's light. This pillar of light soared into the sky, carrying the power of faith from 100,000 miles up in the sky, and rushed straight into the center of the thunder lights. Like a giant invisible pillar inserted into a pool of water, the center of the thunder lights stirred up a 1,000-mile-wide pitch-black vortex that pierced straight into the void. At the same time, the ghostly green light that had appeared first, but had now been forgotten by everyone, stuck close to the edge of the vortex and went deep into it. Woo woo woo. A mysterious sound that sounded like the cries of gods and ghosts was heard in the void. Wherever the ghostly green light flashed, the black and white in the thunder lights immediately intertwined and turned into a grayish-white color. This grayish-white color was as still as marble at first, but then it condensed into the green light and began to swirl wildly. A huge transmission channel finally took shape in Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra's shock. Buzz! The space thousands of miles above the sky rumbled because of the appearance of this space channel. The entire space was distorted by the pressure. All the light and shadows, whether they were Buddha's light, thunder lights, or clouds, were elongated. The sound of thunder was also faintly discernible in everyone's ears. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The will of heaven and earth, which had previously imprisoned hundreds of thousands of miles of the Great Snow Mountain, began to permeate the space, creating ripples in the distorted light and shadows. Someone from the Buddhist kingdom? Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra was so shocked that he was numb. He did not know how to think. A thought was barely squeezed out of his mind, but it was instantly shattered by the scene in front of him. Whoa! A strange whistling sound of wind was heard. It was extremely long. Then, countless crazy waves of energy were emitted from the teleportation channel. These waves of energy carried with them the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. However, as soon as these ripples appeared, they were immediately destroyed by the will of heaven and earth that permeated through the space channel. Rumble! Tens of thousands of thunderbolts in the space gathered toward the space channel. In the blink of an eye, all the thunderbolts had gathered into a huge ball. As soon as this ball of thunderbolts was formed, the transmission channel that pierced straight into the void began to shrink and collapse. The green, gray, and Buddha's light instantly reversed. Boom! A huge rumble sounded again, and the entire sky was silent. All the colors faded, and a golden Buddha statue that was tens of thousands of feet tall appeared in the ball of thunderbolts like a dazzling stream of light. Nanwu Maitreya Buddha. Although he could not see what the golden Buddha statue looked like in the thunderbolts, Nanwu Maitreya Samantabhadra still chanted Buddha's name with a smile on his face. It seemed that he had made a decision at this moment. Boom! The silence only lasted for a few breaths. Then, tens of thousands of thunderbolts surged. All the thunderbolts converged, and like a myriad of streams returning to their origin, they fell into a tall and thin figure behind the golden Buddha statue. Amidst the thunderbolts, a slightly excited and surprised voice rang out. Damn it, that was so close. I didn't expect that this transmission channel would not be enough to reach the Great Snow Mountain. If not for the Great Master's power of faith on the Great Snow Mountain, and the fact that this power of faith can ignore space and time, even if I left a divine will mark here, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to be transmitted here so easily. Chapter 4283. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Don't be happy too early. We haven't explored yet, so we don't know if this is the Great Snow Mountain. If this is the Great Snow Mountain we are in. At this time, the lightning disappeared, and a divine sense that made Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart tremble swept over from the place where the lightning disappeared. When that divine sense instantly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain, the excitement and ecstasy in that voice disappeared without a trace. Yes, this is the Great Snow Mountain, and below us is the exquisite temple. Even, this Great Snow Mountain is the Great Snow Mountain we are in. Because the sutra seeking extreme bliss has only just begun. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Another voice sounded in the air. This way our inner demons can be cut off. Yes, since we have already returned, this welcoming ceremony is unnecessary. While speaking, Xiaohua's thin and tall figure slowly walked down from where the lightning was. It was as if there was a flight of stairs that led to the heavens. As Xiaohua walked down, layers of pressure fell on the little exquisite temple like a huge mountain. When Xiaohua's voice fell, Xiaohua raised his hand and waved. A huge palm appeared, and all the fluctuations and strange lights fell into his palm. However, it was only a moment before the omnipresent will of the world fell again. With a swish-swish sound, the huge hand immediately shrank by more than 40%. However, even so in the sky, other than the Buddhist light, the five-colored halo, the dark clouds, the lightning, and the clouds were all taken into Xiaohua's hand. Even the sky that was like a wrinkle was smoothed out by him at this moment, causing everyone to tremble in fear. As soon as the anomaly disappeared, a strange phenomenon occurred around the golden Buddha statue once again. Rumble. The Buddha's light that was previously covered by the lightning shone brightly again. The river of faith that was originally like a gurgling stream was now like a monstrous torrent that gushed out from various cracks in the void and fell into the light of the Buddha's light that had already solidified. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Wherever the river of faith went, millions of Buddhist kingdoms were born. Endless heavenly flowers covered 100,000 miles of space, and a strange fragrance filled the air. Thousands of heavenly dragons and fairies began to appear. The sound of wooden fish and the chanting of 10,000 Buddhas sounded like the sounds of nature. An indescribable benevolence was emitted from the forehead of the Buddha statue. Moreover, the Buddha statue slowly fell, and its target was the golden Buddha statue that Xiaohua had just left. Namo Maitreya Buddha. At this point, Samantabhadra no longer had any doubts. As long as the Buddhist light condensed from the power of faith fell into the golden Buddha statue, the Buddha Lord from the Buddhist kingdom would definitely attain Namo Maitreya Buddha's fruit. However, what surprised Samantabhadra was that although the Buddhist light of the golden Buddha statue hadn't dissipated and he still couldn't see the Buddha Lord's appearance clearly, after the golden Buddha statue slowly returned to normal, it raised its hand slightly and an 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared, wanting to block the descending golden Buddha statue. How is this possible? Doesn't the Buddha Lord want to attain fruit? Samantabhadra was dumbfounded. However, the Buddhist lotus didn't seem to be enough to block the Buddha statue that had attained fruit. The Buddha statue landed on the lotus platform under its feet. Alas, why do you have to make things difficult for this poor monk? The golden body of the Buddha sighed. The compassion in his words made the selfish thoughts in Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart disappear instantly. Then, the golden body of the Buddha waved his hand, and a 7-colored light flashed. A Buddhist instrument fell on top of his head, blocking the Buddha statue that had attained fruition. How is this possible? Which Buddhist weapon can? The wonderful tree of 7 treasures? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was completely dumbfounded. Why is this Buddhist treasure here? Namo Maitreya Buddha. I understand now. With this item alone, Buddha Lord can obtain the position of Namo Maitreya Buddha. Since the Buddha statue was stopped, the golden Buddha statue returned to its original state. When the golden Buddha statue turned around, Samantabhadra of Namo Pilgrim had a complete mental breakdown. He was almost ecstatic in his heart, because there was another Xuanzang in front of him. This. Samantabhadra felt his golden body lose its color, and he felt like scratching his ears and cheeks. Second senior brother, quickly come and see. Draconic horse Zhen Feng raised its head, its hoofs trembling slightly as it said, "There's another monk in the sky." Nonsense. Zhen Han swallowed a mouthful of saliva and whispered, "That's Master." Master? Draconic horse Zhen Feng was stunned. Looking at Xuanzang, who was still being captured by the 5-colored demon race, he asked curiously, "Isn't our master that?" "How can that weak monk be our master?" Zhen Han coldly transmitted, "Only this Buddha Lord who can attain Buddhahood can be our master." Draconic horse Zhen Feng understood the meaning of Zhen Han's words and couldn't help but shout, "Second senior brother, you're really good at taking advantage of the situation." Zhen Han smiled and said, "There are hundreds of millions of people like me in the 3 continents. One more won't make much of a difference." Namo Maitreya Buddha. The Buddha statue with the face of Xuanzang, but in reality, it was Buddha Subhudi's golden body. Just as it was about to speak, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. His voice was extremely cold and frigid. Even though his voice was extremely faint, it resounded like thunder within the space of 1,000 li, master. Let's put your matter aside for now. It won't be too late to talk about it after I deal with this matter. I'll listen to Tanyue's instructions. Bodhi smiled and didn't say anything. He also slowly walked down from the sky. As Bodhi walked down from the sky, the imprisonment of the entire Great Snow Mountain disappeared like snow melting ice. Seeing that the imprisonment was gone, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped on the lotus platform and flew up to the sky to greet Bodhi. He put his palms together and saluted. Disciple Samantabhadra Bodhisattva greets Maitreya Buddha of the world. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Bodhi waved his right hand and the Buddha light turned into a cluster of heavenly flowers that supported Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He said, "This poor monk isn't Buddha Lord Maitreya Buddha. Bodhisattva, you've bowed to the wrong person." What? Buddha Lord? Buddha Lord isn't Buddha Lord? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was even more surprised. He looked at the Buddha fruit above his head that was blocked by the wonderful tree of 7 treasures and almost blurted out. "You've taken the Buddha position and you still say you're not Buddha Lord?" Xiao Hua walked to the sky above the Shaolin Long Temple. His eyes swept across the temple that had not changed much. The scene of him meeting the old monk here that day quickly flashed past his eyes, and then his eyes fell on Xuanzang, who was captured by the monster. He already understood that today was the day when Jiang Luer passed by the Great Snow Mountain and obtained the gold leaf of the exquisite Palm Leaf Sutra from the Shaolin Long Temple. But long before this moment, he had already taken away the gold leaf. Today, Jiang Luer was destined not to get the gold leaf, destined not to achieve fruition. Fortunately, he had rushed back in time. The sutra-seeking nirvana had just begun, and Jiang Luer was only passing by the Great Snow Mountain. As long as his Buddha avatar returned the exquisite leaf sutra and the ancient Kali he had obtained from the primitive continent to Jiang Luer would be able to achieve perfect fruition as a Xuanzang. When Xiao Hua's eyes moved from the colorful brilliance in Yuan Tongtian's body to the light strands on Xuanzang's body and then to the shell monster, he laughed angrily and said, "Who are you? How dare you disturb the sutra-seeking in paradise?" "Haha, it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, who's behind me?" Seeing Xiao Hua's divine sense, the monster naturally knew that he was no match for him. Chapter 4284. Xiao Hua originally wanted to turn his head, but when he saw Xuanzang's expression change, his heart moved, and he said with a smile, "Xuanzang, don't be afraid, just stand here. With this Xiao here, no matter who it is, they can't hurt even a hair on your head." Xiao Hua's words were really arrogant, but in Xuanzang's ears, they were so firm. He didn't put his palms together to speak, but slightly nodded, and replied yes. At this time, his expression had already returned to normal. "Useless thing." Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the seriously injured Yuan Tongtian in midair, and he scolded. Yuan Tongtian saw Xiao Hua's powerful appearance, and his heart was already shocked. He and Xiao Hua's fate was not shallow. Early on in the Flame Forest Swamp, when he was released from the seal, he saw Xiao Hua. At that time, Xiao Hua was just an aura refining cultivator, and in his eyes, he was just an ant. Later on, when he saw Xiao Hua again, the fire ape began to suffer in Xiao Hua's hands. After that, Yuan Tongtian refused to submit to Xiao Hua several times, and that unruly temperament aroused Xiao Hua's good impression. Now that he saw Xiao Hua again on the snowy mountain in the Pure Land world, Yuan Tongtian almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. At this time, Xiao Hua's magical power was far from what he could compare to. His unruly temperament simply didn't have the qualifications to be arrogant in front of Xiao Hua. However, when Yuan Tongtian heard Xiao Hua's words, he was stunned at first, but then, a shock that was even more indescribable than when he saw Xiao Hua rose from the bottom of his heart. In just an instant, he seemed to have understood something. He was originally imprisoned by Xiao Hua. How did he inexplicably come to the Pure Land world? Perhaps only Xiao Hua knew. Moreover, although Xiao Hua's words were scolding, but it was obviously a kind of rebuke from an elder to a junior. Yuan Tongtian connected Patriarch Subhuti and Xiao Hua together, and he couldn't help but struggle. Xiao Hua also didn't expect that in Yuan Tongtian's ears, His words were simply 100 times more effective than elixirs. Yuan Tongtian's dispirited face immediately showed ecstasy, and the heart that had been wandering for hundreds of years suddenly returned to him. His eyes blossomed with a rare golden light, and that golden light was blocked by overflowing tears. Yuan Tongtian suddenly flew into the air. His flesh that had been torn apart by the five-colored halo was now bleeding profusely. Humph! Seeing Yuan Tongtian like this, Xiaohua's heart ached for no reason. He waved his hand, and the five-colored brilliance around Yuan Tongtian's body also fell into his hand, and at the same time, a medicinal pill, and said to come to the Pure Land world to seek scriptures. To seek scriptures isn't to be courting death? How would Yuan Tongtian dare to speak? When the medicinal pill fell into his stomach, the magical effect rushed out from inside out, and the wounds all over Yuan Tongtian's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. See. Others might not know, but Namo Great House Samantabhadra was extremely clear about the dangers of the five-colored halo. This halo that even gave Mahavairakana a headache was like child's play in Xiaohua's hands. How could he not be shocked? Immediately after, Xiaohua did another thing that shocked everyone. Xiaohua didn't make a move against the five-colored demon, but instead raised his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, a beam of light shot out, and 1,000 Zhonglong pig demon flew out from that beam of light. What a big pig! Dragon Horse Zhenfeng couldn't help but cry out in surprise in the small temple. How many meals will it take to finish this? When this pig demon appeared, the will of the world that had already disappeared near the snowy mountain reappeared. With a crackling sound, inexplicable thunderbolts and fluctuations fell into the pig demon's body, and the pig demon's body rapidly shrank, and in a few breaths, it was only 100 zhong long. Stop eating! Xiaohua looked at the sleepy Tunchen, who still didn't know what was going on, and angrily scolded. Why aren't you looking at who this is? Who is it? When Tunchen heard Xiaohua tell him to stop eating, he was startled at first, but when he saw Zhonglu beside Xiaohua, the sleepiness on his face instantly disappeared, and a kind of excitement and ecstasy emerged from his heart. He recklessly threw himself in front of Chuanzong, kowtowed and shouted, Buddha Lord you! So you are here! Amitba! Chuanzong naturally didn't understand what was going on, and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do as he looked at this unusually simple and honest pig demon, not knowing what to do. Xiaohua looked at Yuan Tongtian, and then at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan in the small temple, and his eyes turned, and he said with a smile, Your Buddha Lord is currently praying for sutras in paradise, and needs a disciple to protect him. Whether you can obtain this honor or not will depend on your performance. Yes, this disciple understands. Tunchen was really ecstatic, and the pig head looked around. When it saw the five-colored shell, it immediately understood something and roared loudly, What? Are you the one who wants to rob my master? What do you mean by your master? If you can't kill this thing, what face do you have to call yourself his disciple? Xiaohua said with a sneer. Do you still need me to take action for this little thing? Tunchen didn't care at all, and raised his hand to take out the nine-toothed rake. The rake emitted a bright light. Whoa! The nine-toothed rake flew across the sky, tearing the void, and hit the shell with a boom. Unfortunately, where the light landed, the five-colored halo brought out several strange patterns, and actually blocked the nine-toothed rake. Damn it! Tunchen couldn't keep his face, and waved the nine-toothed rake again. If this old man imprisons this monster again, it will be said that the strong are bullying the weak. Xiaohua laughed and removed the imprisonment. The five-colored monster loosened its body, and hurriedly urged its divine ability to fight against Tunchen. You don't need to think about escaping. Xiaohua saw that the five-colored monster wanted to fight while retreating, and immediately said with a smile, You can't escape from this old man's hands. This old man also won't attack you. If you can win against these juniors, you only need to tell me how you know this old man, and this old man will let you go. Good. Junior heard that Taoist Master Zhao's words carry enormous weight. I hope you all remember what you said now. The five-colored monster's body was a shellfish, and when it fanned its two hard shells, the five-colored halo danced in the surrounding 100 miles. Seeing that the halo couldn't fly more than half a foot, the five-colored monster knew that it couldn't escape, and hurriedly dealt with Tunchen while answering. Boom! In the instant that he was distracted, the nine-toothed rake smashed into one of his shells, causing the five-colored light to become chaotic, which was a rare sight. Seeing that the nine-toothed rake was only able to cause the five-colored shell to shake, the heaven-devouring beast let out an angry roar. Although the roar was like a pig's snort, the strands of lightning mixed with the wind soared into the sky and landed on the five-colored shell with a rumble, dispersing the five-colored light and revealing the demon's shell. Humph! Xueqi coldly snorted. If he didn't say anything, how could he personally attack? Xueqi could not help but frown as he watched the heaven-devouring beast and the five-colored demon race fight for a while. The heaven-devouring beast's strength was comparable to the borderline 9th grade essence force on the elemental desolate continent. However, in the elemental paradise, due to the laws of heaven and earth, his divine abilities were greatly restricted. Currently, his essence force was merely at the upper 8th grade. Even though this five-colored demon race's strength was only at the lower stages of the 8th grade of essence force, its shell was very sturdy and the five-colored halo was very mystical. Under such circumstances, the sky-devouring demon race seemed to be on par with the five-colored demon race. Even if a winner could be determined, it would be a long time later. Xueqi's strange teleportation to the snowy mountain had already shocked the Thunder Temple. Moreover, Nanwu Maitreya Buddha still wanted to achieve enlightenment. Xueqi didn't want to attract the attention of Mahavairakana, so he glanced at Yuan Tongtian, who had already opened his eyes, and said coldly, "How are your injuries?" "If Zhenren Xiao knows, I won't die." Yuan Tongtian almost called out the word master. But seeing Xueqi's appearance, he didn't dare to be too sure. Of course, Patriarch Bodhi said clearly that he shouldn't call him master in the future, so Yuan Tongtian hurriedly changed the way he addressed Xueqi. "That's good." Xueqi waved his hand, took out the wishful steel rod, and threw it to Yuan Tongtian. "I'll lend you this thing first. Go kill this monster first." "Yes, Zhenren." Seeing Xueqi throw his weapon to him, Yuan Tongtian was really happy. After receiving it, he shouted, "Junior will not shame Zhenren." Yuan Tongtian practiced the dragon transformation art, and his arms were infinitely strong, but the moment he received the wishful steel rod, his whole body couldn't help but fall a lot. But it was only a few breaths. Yuan Tongtian roared, waved the wishful steel rod, and rushed to the five-colored demon clan. The five-colored demon clan was already tired of resisting the Tunshin, so how could he handle Yuan Tongtian's addition? It was just a few rounds. Boom! The wishful steel rod fell on the five-colored halo, and the five-colored halo, which specialized in restraining the Buddhist light, dissipated in front of absolute power. Ka-ka! The moment the halo dissipated, the nine-toothed rake fell, and suddenly smashed several cracks in the shell. Puff puff puff. Just as the crack appeared, the sound of wind whistling was heard in the air again. Several pale white shadows fell and pierced into the crack again, piercing deep into the shell. They were the bone spikes that had been hidden in the air for a long time. Ow ow! The five-colored demon clan cried out in pain, and the two shells couldn't help but open. Puff! The Tunshin's pig nose had already spewed out lightning, and it took advantage of the gap to hit the five-colored demon clan inside the shell. Zilala! Under the lingering lightning, the halo above the shell was shattered, and when the light disappeared, the strange texture on the shell was also smoothed out. Demon, looking for a beating. Yuan Tongtian was excited, and the wishful steel rod in his hand fell on the demon clan's shell. Without the five-colored light, the shell was like fragile glass, and with a crack, it was shattered. However, compared to the heaven-devouring beast, Yuan Tongtian's strike was nothing. The heaven-devouring beast raised its front hoof and smashed down like a mountain. Boom! With a loud bang, all the shells in its path were shattered. Moreover, a huge pig's hoof mark appeared on the five-colored body. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.